Chapter 152. What is this? Yan Xian leaned over to look at the grass in Meng Qi's hand. The grass was dark green, a bit darker than normal grass. It wasn't very conspicuous when mixed in the grass, but after being sniffed, it was very obvious. This is drunken dragon grass, Meng Qi said as she leaned over and pulled out a few more pieces. She brought it to her nose and sniffed it, then handed a piece of drunken dragon grass to Yan Xian. Yan Xian also followed her and sniffed it. When the grass that didn't look very special came close, he smelled a strong smell of alcohol. What a strong smell of wine. Yan Xian looked at the drunken dragon grass. No wonder it's called this. Even dragons can get drunk from it. Meng Qi glanced at him. Now she knew why Yan Xian wasn't affected. Drunken dragon grass wasn't like normal wine. Drinking too much of it would make people delirious. Drunken dragon grass intoxicated the consciousness of Xiuzhe, so normal people would be fine when they smelled it. Yan Xian was also a Xiuzhe, but after his inner core was injured, his cultivation was only equivalent to a Lianqi Xiuzhe, a bit better than normal people. The effect of drunken dragon grass on him was less. As for Meng Qi, when she was in the swamp, poisonous gas and miasma were everywhere. She took a dan that could suppress hundreds of poisons. The effect of the dan hadn't worn off yet, so she wasn't affected. When Meng Qi thought of this, she pulled over Sikong Xing and stuffed the dan into her mouth. She lifted her chin slightly and looked forward. Among those Xiuzhe, among her good friends, Li Che was also a medical Xiuzhe, but the other clearly hadn't reacted yet. After all, drunken dragon grass was very rare. It didn't look much different from normal grass, and the smell was very faint. Only by inhaling enough of drunken dragon grass for a long enough time would one be affected. Li Che was standing unsteadily in the middle of his fellow disciples. The disciples of Songlang Academy always had a harmonious relationship, and he was also a medical Xiuzhe, so he didn't have much enmity with others. At this time, several people were standing in the crowd. Although they were also affected, it was not enough for them to make a move. "Let's go," Meng Qi said, pulling Sikong Xing and walking quickly towards Li Che with Yan Xian. She also stuffed an antidote pill into Li Che's mouth. Not long after, Sikong Xing's wobbly body steadied itself, and his gaze gradually became clear. Meng Qi. She shook her head and looked at her friend. What happened just now?" She suddenly widened her eyes in shock. Some of the Xiuzhe of the large sects on the grasslands had already started to move. Some of them were from the same sect who had conflicts with each other in the past. Perhaps it was originally a small matter, but right now they were in the 10 Extremes mountain. Everyone knew that as long as they left this place, no one would remember what had happened. Coupled with the fact that the drunken dragon grass had bewitched his divine sense, the little bit of ruthlessness that was usually forcefully suppressed in his body surfaced. Quite a few people had already been killed in an instant. Sikong Xing's beautiful eyes widened. What's wrong with them? Just as she finished speaking, there was a long scream. A Xiuzhe was heavily hit in the chest by a fellow sect member wearing robes of the same color. That Xiuzhe's scream had not stopped, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. When the blood landed on the grass around him suddenly started to furiously grow. Meng Qi frowned and said, "If the drunken dragon grass is watered with fresh blood, it will grow much faster, and its medicinal effects will greatly increase." "I really seem to smell it. Such a strong smell of alcohol," Sikong Xing murmured. It wasn't just her. Yan Xian also smelled it. At this time, more and more Xiuzhe were injured, and the smell of alcohol in the air became even stronger. Just now, they had needed to bring the drunken dragon grass close to their noses to smell it. Now, just by standing there, they could smell bursts of the gradually increasing fragrance of alcohol coming from all directions. Elegant, right? Li Che slowly woke up at this time. He naturally also smelled the extremely strong fragrance of alcohol that spread through the grasslands. This is the bitter taste of the dan that Meng Qi had given him still lingered in his mouth. "Is this spirit-cleansing dan?" "Oh." Meng Qi nodded. "Drunken dragon grass?" Li Che's expression became stern. The smell of alcohol in the grasslands was so strong that he could not ignore it. The stronger the smell of the drunken dragon grass, the more frenzied those Xiozha attacked. Li Che and Si Kongxing exchanged a look and saw hints of shock in each other's eyes. "It's drunken dragon grass," Meng Qi said in a deep voice. "Spirit cleansing Dan can suppress hundreds of poisons, but it is not easy to make, right?" Li Che said, "I only have 12. Meng Qi sighed lightly. This Dan used spirit cleansing grass as the main ingredient, but it could suppress hundreds of poisons. There were many ling herbs added, and it was very time-consuming to make. Meng Qi only had 12. She had taken one in the bog before, and had just given one each to Si Kongxing and Li Che. She took out 2 more to give to Li Che, so that he could go save his sect members. "Many thanks." Li Che bowed towards Meng Qi. "Since it is drunken dragon grass, I have some snow listening grass here. Maybe there is no need to use spirit cleansing Dan." Meng Qi glanced at him. She bent down, parted the grass, and plucked a little white flower from grass. "This is a little ghost orchid." Li Che took the little white flower, and his expression became even more serious. The little white flower was only the size of a fingernail. It was inconspicuous, growing in the grass like a normal little wildflower. Now that he held it closer, he saw it clearly. Although the little white flower was small, when its 4 petals spread out, it looked like a child making a face. It really was a little ghost orchid. Meng Qi took a deep breath and said, "Drunken dragon grass is not hard to cure. Snow listening grass is enough. But when the snow listening grass encounters this little ghost orchid, the poison will enter the body. Even the spirit sea wall of a Dongshu expert will be eroded. Then the poison will be hard to cure." "That's right." Li Che sighed softly and gave 2 spirit cleansing Dan to his sect members. "Look, the person who planted this drunken dragon grass had already calculated this. If they wanted to save people now, they only needed to inhale the medicinal energy of the snow listening grass. But these Xiozha had already inhaled the fragrance of the little ghost orchid for so long. With the addition of the snow listening grass, the drunken dragon grass was cured, but the poison was deeper." Li Che's expression also showed helplessness. At this time, they really needed a Dan like spirit cleansing Dan. But, he slightly raised his head to look at the sky. But in his mind, he kept recalling the medical books he had read. Yan Xian, on the other hand, was rather calm. He just quietly stood beside Meng Qi. Meng Qi had already found Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xioma in the crowd, but these 2 were also deeply involved in the chaotic battle. With the cultivation of her and her little companions, it was impossible for them to charge through the fighting Xiozha and safely reach the 2 people's side. She looked around again, only to see Pei Mufeng sitting cross-legged on the grass. His natal long sword floated above his head, protecting him and his 2 sect members within the sword light. "You guys stay here. I'll go to Pavilion Master Pei," Meng Qi said. "Meng Qi, I'll go with you." Si Kongxing put 2 fingers on her right hand together, and a ball of black water protected her and Meng Qi in the center. "Let's go." Si Kongxing was also a decisive person. Immediately, the 2 of them rushed towards Pei Mufeng. They didn't dare to rush through the chaotic crowd, so they circled around the edge of the crowd and circled in front of the 3 people from Falling Star Pavilion. Of the 2 sect members behind Pei Mufeng, one was Su Zijuan, who had entered Falling Star Sea with him. Pavilion Master Pei. Meng Qi held a medicinal pill in her hand and quickly sent it into Pei Mufeng's mouth. Pei Mufeng didn't doubt at all, opening his mouth and swallowing the pill. Meng Qi took out 2 more medicinal pills and gave one each to Su Zijuan and the other Falling Star Pavilion disciple. Of the 12 medicinal pills, only 4 were left. Meng Qi turned back to look at the fighting Xiozha. When Pei Mufeng also stood up, she immediately said, "Pavilion Master Pei, my 2 friends are still inside. Please, let's go." Pei Mufeng's finger pointed, and his life-bond long sword opened a path in front of him. He was already very strong, and after training in Falling Star Sea for the past few months, his swordsmanship had improved. His life-bond long sword suddenly flew out, as fast as the wind, so fast that people couldn't even see the shadow of the sword clearly. With this protection, Meng Qi and the others didn't spend much effort to safely rush to Chu Tianfeng's side. Pei Mufeng swung his sword twice and forced back the Xiuzhe who was fighting with Chu Tianfeng. Chu Tianfeng. Meng Qi quickly walked forward and stuffed a clear wind pill into his mouth. Chu Tianfeng wasn't injured, but his clothes and cheeks were splattered with blood. He swallowed the medicinal pill, and his eyes became clear after a while. Meng Qi. He exhaled and looked in disbelief at Meng Qi standing in front of him. His life bond talisman was a red, lotus-like talisman, and it was still floating by his side. What happened to us?" Chu Tianfeng exclaimed. "Such a strong smell of alcohol. Let's talk later," Meng Qi said. They charged in the direction of Qin Xiuma. With Chu Tianfeng in the group, it was much easier and faster than before. After a while, Meng Qi gave Qin Xiuma a clear spirit pill. They immediately charged out of the chaotic battle and returned to Li Chei's side. At this time, Su Zijuan and Pei Mufeng's other sect member had arrived. The smell of alcohol on the grasslands was so strong, it was intoxicating. Li Chei was still looking into the distance, muttering, "So what's going on?" Chu Tianfeng wiped away the blood on his face and asked angrily, "Is this purposefully provoking us to fight?" Once they left, they would forget what had happened in 10 Extreme Mountain. It was equivalent to a chaotic place without any morals or rules. The drunken dragon grass that could enchant Xiuzhe's consciousness caused them to lose control over themselves, adding on the fact that the person had used some kind of bewitching technique to tempt them. Most people could not control themselves. A few of them had already withdrawn from the battle, but the others were still engaged in a chaotic battle. If this continued, they would probably kill until their eyes were red, and they would not rest until they were dead. Qin Xiuma turned to look at Yin Xian and asked coldly, 10 Extreme Mountain only opens once every 100 years for disciples of other sects to enter. When it opens every 10 years, only your sect's disciples can enter. Even if you do not know what happened here, is there 1/3 of the disciples that can leave alive each time? Yin Xian and Qin Xiuma exchanged a look and said, "Yes." He paused and then continued, "If more than half of the disciples that entered each time died, my mirror moon sky would have collapsed long ago. This is... Oh!" At this time, another voice sounded beside everyone. The young man who suddenly appeared held his breath halfway. "Drunken dragon grass?" He looked at Meng Qi, and his eyes were full of surprise. "You guys, it's drunken dragon grass." Meng Qi nodded. The person who came was Shui Chengxian. He had already gone to the second trial, so he must have passed the second trial and came out again. He was the most outstanding disciple of the Wind Alliance. Once he smelled the alcohol and saw the chaotic scene, he immediately guessed most of what happened. "I have some snow listening grass here. Maybe..." Shui Chengxian spoke halfway and bent down to pick a small ghost orchid. "Small ghost orchid? It's a small ghost orchid," Meng Qi said. "This," Shui Chengxian murmured. "If the small ghost orchid is added with snow listening grass, the poison will be very powerful." "Yes," Meng Qi nodded. She was also quickly thinking about what other ways to detoxify the drunken dragon grass besides snow listening grass. "Little friend," the voice that was silent for a while suddenly sounded again. "Since you've already saved your friends, you should leave quickly. What does the life and death of others have to do with you? Don't forget that these people are your next opponents." Li Chei was still looking up at the sky, muttering. Shui Chengxian was silent, and his expression was quite serious. Meng Qi withdrew her divine sense. The bamboo slip that Lin Yin gave her was emitting a faint light, and the contents of the bamboo slip were quickly imprinted in her eyes. The three of them seemed to have not heard the voice at all, and they were completely lost in thought. Qin Xiuma and Chu Tianfeng looked at each other. The two of them stood on the left and right, and their life-bound magic treasures and long swords floated beside them. They were really not surprised at all that Meng Qi would be like this. Not only Meng Qi, but the three medical cultivators were really... The two of them did not know how to describe it. Forget about Li Chei. They had always heard of Shui Changxian as the eldest son of the Wind Alliance's Shui family. Almost everyone recognized him as the future leader of the Wind Alliance and the head of the Shui family. Shui Changxian was an accident most of the time, except for that time in the Fallen Star Sea, when he had thrown away many concerns and completely let go, then fought side by side with them. Most of the time, Shui Qingxian would put the interests of his family first. But now, he clearly had a great advantage and could completely ignore these people and continue to maintain his advantage. The expression on his face was exactly the same as Meng Qi and Li Chei's. Qin Xiaoma and Chu Tianfeng looked at each other again. This group of people was really... There's a way. Meng Qi suddenly flicked her finger, and a sparkling jade slip appeared in front of her. This is the jade slip that I got in the Fallen Star Sea last time. She said, a medical manual left behind by a senior who died in the Fallen Star Sea. Meng Qi pointed her finger at the jade slip, and a line of words flew out of the jade slip and quickly circled around Li Che and the others. In addition to snow listening grass, drunken dragon grass can also be cured with little ghost orchids. Meng Qi was a little surprised, but also not very surprised. Everything in the world reinforced and countered each other. So, she looked around. The grassland was dotted with little white flowers, and there were many little ghost orchids here. In other words, an ancient senior who planted this drunken dragon grass had actually left something to cure the poison of drunken dragon grass. In the medical books of later generations, there were very few mentions of little ghost orchids being able to cure drunken dragon grass poison. Meng Qi, Li Che, and Shui Changxian looked at each other. Together with the other two disciples of the Surging Waves Academy, they waved their right hands, and medicine knives were already in their hands. Medical cultivators may have different life-bound magic treasures, but almost everyone had a medicine knife. Immediately, they worked together to dig up the little ghost orchids by the roots. It was recorded in the medical notes that if you wrung out the sap from the roots of the little ghost orchids and slapped it on the foreheads of people poisoned by drunken dragon grass, it could cure the poison. It was not hard to say, but there were so many Xiozha poisoned here, and it was a chaotic battle. It would take too much time to treat them one by one. I bought a talisman before. Meng Qi raised her hand to summon her 5-spirit cauldron and motioned for the others to throw the roots of the little ghost orchids they dug up into her 5-spirit cauldron. She flicked out a few more ling stones. The roots of the little ghost orchids in the 5-spirit cauldron were refined into a ball of green liquid in just a few moments. Meng Qi took out the Heavenly Sea Pavilion talisman she had bought before from her storage bag. That talisman could mix poison into rainwater. It would not only increase the effectiveness of the poison, but also increase the range of the poison. This can be used right now, she said joyfully. I'll go first. I hadn't thought that this talisman could be used like this. Yin Xian looked at Meng Qi with a slightly complicated expression. He had been listening from the side. He had thought that Meng Qi and the others were going to save them one by one after refining the medicine. Although that would be a little slower, they could decide who to save and who not to save. He did not expect that she was going to use such a talisman. Was she going to save everyone regardless of the difference? Li Che leaned over curiously. There's such a talisman? Where did you buy it? I'm going to buy one too. With it, it will be much more convenient for us to encounter the miasma outbreak in the southern land every few years. It's from a heavenly sea pavilion in the heavens beyond heaven, Meng Qi said. Right? This is quite useful. As she spoke, she had already neatly sent the medicinal liquid refined from the roots of the little ghost orchids into the talisman. Meng Qi tapped lightly with her finger, and spiritual energy was sent into the talisman. In just a moment, rain fell from the sky. On the grassland that was originally filled with the smell of alcohol, the air seemed to have been cleansed and became fresh again. The eyes of the cultivators who were fighting in a frenzy gradually became clear. It was unknown who started first, but they slowly stopped fighting. The sound of weapons clashing gradually became softer. In the end, only the sound of the rain falling and hitting the grass could be heard. Between heaven and earth, there was silence. Chapter 153. The soul-tethered talismans and soul-tethered long swords floating in the air disappeared one by one. The Shioja that had been fighting until their eyes were red panting as they stood on the grass, looking at each other. Most of them had been in the same sect before entering Ten Extremes Mountain. Usually, they were brothers and the sect was peaceful. But just a moment ago, everyone wanted nothing more than to kill the other party. Actually, thinking back, that person didn't say anything. But everyone knew that after leaving Ten Extremes Mountain, everything that happened here would be forgotten. As long as you could leave alive, no one would know if you stepped on the corpses of your fellow sect members to advance. Because of this, everyone forgot etiquette, justice, honor, and the friendship of fellow sect members. That seemed not right. At this time, the people standing on the grass were basically the young disciples of the 10 great sects of the 3,000 worlds and 4 Jie, and the most outstanding ones. They looked dazedly at each other, feeling that something wasn't right. Even though they knew the situation in Ten Extremes Mountain was like this, but many people asked themselves they never thought they would attack fellow sect members. Just now, they really couldn't control themselves at all, like their bodies weren't controlled by their consciousness at all. At this time, even though the poison of the drunken dragon grass had been cured, almost half of the Shioja were injured. Drip, drip, drip. Blood from the wounds on someone's arm flowed down their fingers and dripped onto the grass. Some people's backs were wet, the smell of blood spread, their hands and feet were cold as if they would collapse in the next second. Some Shioja were injured by fellow sect members and were familiar with the internal and external wounds on their bodies. None of them moved. They just stood there, as if whoever spoke first would lose. Meng Qi, Li Che, and the others were squatting on the ground, the medicine knife still held horizontally in their hands. Her left hand held a small bag. Inside was a lot of drunken dragon grass. It wasn't that this grass didn't exist in the 3,000 worlds, but it wasn't as good as the ones in Ten Extremes Mountain. Li Che was doing a similar thing. Other than this, the two had also collected a big bag of small ghost orchids. Small ghost orchids were much less seen. Meng Qi had seen them in books before. The best quality small ghost orchids had vermilion red fruits that were as small as pearls on their roots. When they dug out the little ghost orchid's rhizome, the vermilion fruits on it were as bright and cute as coral pearls. I have enough. Li Che put the small medicine pouch into his storage pouch. He looked at Meng Qi and said, "These little ghost orchids are different from the ones in the 3,000 worlds. Almost all the little ghost orchids in our world are from the south. We've planted some in our sect, but none of the fruits are as red as this." Really? Meng Qi directly dug out a complete little ghost orchid and put it into a small jade box along with the soil on the roots. "Then I'll take one out and see if I can raise it." Qin Xiaoma and Chu Tianfeng stood side by side beside Meng Qi. At the same time, they were also vigilantly watching the practitioners who had woken up. These people had just entered the Ten Extremes Mountain not long ago. Obviously, they had not recovered from the shock of suddenly falling out with their fellow disciples and good friends. At this time, they were still standing in the same place in a daze. No one paid much attention to Meng Qi and the others. The two of them looked at each other. Qin Xiaoma was certain that even if something really happened, they had him, Chu Tianfeng, Xikong Xing, the 3 people for Falling Star Pavilion, Meng Qi, and Li Che. Even if Xue Chengxian did not help them, they still had the power to fight. "Are you done?" Qin Xiaoma bent down slightly and asked Meng Qi. "Yes." Meng Qi put the jade box into her storage pouch and stood up. She looked around and saw the Shioja had regained their clarity. At this time, most of the people's gazes were somewhat evasive. The entire grassland was awkward and quiet. Instead, no one continued to enter the next stage. Meng Qi and Qin Xiaoma looked at each other. The other nodded slightly at her, and then blinked quickly. She was stunned. Before she understood Qin Xiaoma's meaning, she saw the black-robed man take a step forward and suddenly said loudly, "Fellow Taoists, please pay the medical fees." Meng Qi, Li Che, Xue Chengxian, the 3 of them stood side by side. Li Che and Xue Chengxian both looked at Meng Qi. Meng Qi's head was also full of question marks. To be honest, Her head was still full of whether this little ghost orchid could be brought out of the 10 Extremes mountain alive and where to plant it in the future. She had not thought of this step yet. Moreover, the person who said this was Qin Xiaoma. Meng Qi could not help but swallow her saliva. She had already vaguely guessed that Qin Xiaoma should know something or even remember something. That was why he had been following her this time and did not pay much attention to Lu Qingran. However, Meng Qi's deepest impression of him was that in her previous life, he was the sect master of the Cloud Peak who later stirred up a storm of blood in the southern land. It was the little demon lord who only knew how to be gentle to Lu Qingran and did not trust anyone else. At this moment, the awkward atmosphere on the resting ground disappeared in an instant. All the Xiuzhe looked in this direction. Most of them still had some confusion in their eyes. Chu Tianfeng took a step forward. His Burning Sky Palace had a unique technique that could record some of the things that happened. In the past, he had shown Meng Qi the image of an elder of his sect going deep into the Yao realm and invading the Yao Lord's territory. His avatar was directly killed. Chu Tianfeng could not be like the elder of his sect and use his avatar to send the image back to the sect across 2 realms. However, it was not difficult for him to just record what had just happened. Chu Tianfeng raised the index and middle fingers of his right hand and pointed towards the air. The radiance of Spirit Qi flickered, and a Spirit Qi screen appeared in the air. On it, a complete record of what had just happened quickly appeared. Even though there was no sound, he was standing next to Meng Qi. They had fallen into the chaos of killing each other, then Meng Qi and the others picking herbs, making medicine, using talismans to save people until they regained consciousness. Everything was recorded clearly. The Xiuzhe had been confused by the drunken dragon grass and the person from 10 Extremes Mountain. Originally, if they did not kill until their Ling energy was exhausted, it would be hard for them to stop. At that time, at least half of the Xiuzhe here would fall. Even if they did not die, they would not be able to continue climbing 10 Extremes Mountain. However, right now, everyone could still stand. Even though there were many Xiuzhe who were injured, their injuries were not serious. It was not a problem to continue after bandaging them. The speed of Chu Tianfeng's demonstration of the technique was much faster than the actual time. In order to let everyone see clearly, he had already repeated it twice in this short period of time. This time, the Xiuzhe's gaze all fell on the faces of Meng Qi and the others. How many spirit stones? Qin Xiaoma turned around to look at Meng Qi. Meng Qi looked at him in a daze. The handsome young man had a serious expression. In his deep eyes, she could see her own small shadow. Even Meng Qi could feel the Ling energy fluctuation on Qin Xiaoma's body. It was obvious that he was about to reach the peak of a major realm and was overflowing with Ling energy. He could pass the tribulation at any time and step into the next major realm. Meng Qi raised his eyebrows, smiled slightly, and said, "One Xian spirit stone." Hiss! Chu Tianfeng couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Looking at it this way, he was still the cheapest. Really, he did not know whether to be happy or not. However, he quickly walked towards those Xiuzhe with Qin Xiaoma. 1 Xian spirit stone per person. Chu Tianfeng's expression was also very serious. For these Xiuzhe who could enter the 10 Extremes Mountain, the sect would prepare some things for them before they came. Talismans, spirit stones, medicinal pills, and naturally, some natural treasures that could save their lives. 1 Xian spirit stone was still something they could take out. Moreover, Chu Tianfeng had just played what happened 2 times in front of everyone. Those medical Xiuzhe had saved them. It was not an exaggeration to say that they had saved their lives. It was only 1 Xian spirit stone. No one planned to renege on this debt in front of so many people. Qin Xiaoma and Qin Xiaoma circled around and quickly returned to Meng Qi's side with 2 small bags of spirit stones. Chu Tianfeng did not even let off his fellow disciples from the Burning Sky Palace. He took 1 Xian spirit stone from each of them. Here, he handed the bag to Meng Qi. There are probably 70 to 80 of them. Amen. Meng Qi immediately divided the Xian spirit stones into 5 portions. Li Che, Shui, Changxian, the two disciples from the Surging Waves Academy, and herself each had one. No need, no need. Li Che waved his hand. Their Surging Waves Academy, naturally, could not compare to the rich and overbearing subleague. However, Meng Qi had first cured him and his fellow disciples of the poison. Afterwards, it was also her idea. Helping them gather the herbs was just a small matter. No matter what, he could not take these Xian spirit stones. You don't have to give it to me. Take it, Meng Qi said. Our rule is that those who work together will split it equally. She smiled at Li Che. It was the same in the Starfall Sea. Take it. Xikong Xing also said. Meng Qi is giving it to you. Just take it. Then many thanks. Li Che put the spirit stones into his storage brocade pouch. This time, his master had prepared many things for him in the 10 Extremes Mountain. He did not lack spirit stones. However, Qin Xiaoma and the others had collected more than 80 Xian spirit stones. Divided among the 5 of them, each person would get more than 10 Xian spirit stones. To Li Che, this was not a small amount of wealth. His fellow disciples were the same. When they saw Li Che accept the spirit stones, they also followed. These two disciples from the Surging Waves Academy usually did some sect missions, and at most, they would be rewarded with 4th or 5th grade spirit stones. Even if they found some rare herbs and handed them over to the sect, they would be rewarded with 7th or 8th grade spirit stones at most. 9th grade spirit stones were already very rare to them. At this time, they were suddenly given more than 10 Xian spirit stones. This was something that no one dared to think about. Li Che's 2 fellow disciples could not help but seriously size up Meng Qi. This young medical cultivator called Meng Qi was really generous. They did not particularly care about spirit stones, but only with spirit stones could they have spirit herbs and spirit flowers, better pill cauldrons and pills. Meng Qi, as the eldest son of the Wind Alliance's Shui family, Shui Changxian was the calmest. Did you all pass the second test? Meng Qi and the others all shook their heads. Shui Changxian pondered for a moment and asked, Qi, what was your first test? A swamp filled with poisonous miasma. Meng Qi said, me too. Li Che said, there are a lot of poisonous insects. It's very similar to the Great Poison Swamp in the southern border. You know, Meng Qi, it's the swamp that has a great poison every 2 years. Are you stupid? Before Meng Qi could speak, Xikong Xing laughed first. Meng Qi has never been to the southern border. How would she know? That's right. Li Che smiled shyly and said embarrassedly, I always feel like I've known Meng Qi for a long time. Sorry, I forgot that you've never been to the southern border. Meng Qi's heart skipped a beat. She had indeed been to the Great Poison Swamp in the southern border, but that was in her previous life. Moreover, she had met Li Che there. At that time, Li Che had fainted inside and was dragged out of the swamp by her. Later, she had spent a lot of effort to detoxify him. Later, Meng Qi frowned. Later, the guy who had betrayed Qin Xiaoma had put up a notice to seek medical treatment for his wife's pregnancy. Out of curiosity, she saw that Li Che's poison had been detoxified and that he was fine. He only needed to rest for 2 days. Therefore, Meng Qi gave some spirit stones to the inn waiter and asked him to take care of Li Che. Then, she went to that guy's residence to treat his wife. Therefore, Li Che also. Meng Qi looked at Li Che. The other party's eyes looked so clear. He smiled embarrassedly at her and said, I'm completely confused. Maybe it's because we fought side by side in the Fallen Star Sea before, so I got confused. Meng Qi shook her head. I also encountered a swamp. A disciple of the Surging Waves Academy hurriedly said. Me too. Another disciple also raised his hand. I asked little sister. She also encountered swamp. Shui Changxian said, so it seems that the first stage that we medical cultivators encounter should be similar. Mine was a forest. There were poisonous insects and snakes in it. Chu Tianfeng said, I burned it with fire. Mine was a snow wolf. Qin Xiaoma said. Fierce eagle. Pei Mufeng also said. Mine was also poisonous insects and snakes. I formed a black water shield and went through it. Xikong Xing said. It seems that the second stage that you're going to face in the Qi. Wait a minute. Chu Tianfeng suddenly interrupted Shui Chengxian loudly. Chi-Chi, are you familiar with Meng Qi? More familiar than us. Shui Chengxian looked into Meng Qi's eyes and smiled slightly. I was rude, Meng Qi. He learned from Si Kongxing and the others how to address Meng Qi, and his tone was even gentler than before. The second stage is full of spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs. You only need to identify them and follow the non-poisonous flowers and plants. You'll come out soon. Shui Chengxian said softly. You'll be fine. I'll wait for you here. Chu Tianfeng, F*CK? Did Shui Chengxian take the wrong medicine? He looked at the eldest son of the Shui family of the Wind Alliance warily. The index and middle fingers of his right hand, which were hanging by his side, were pressed together, ready to rush out at any time. He suddenly remembered that this guy's sister had said that the elders of the Shui family wanted Shui Chengxian to marry Meng Qi. It could be said that she passed the apricot forest competition's barrier test in front of all the medical cultivators in the world and received the approval of their ancient mystic realm great doctor, Lin Yin. Based on this, the Shui family hoped that their future family head could marry Meng Qi. So, Chu Tianfeng became more and more vigilant. So this Shui Chengxian planned to listen to the elders of the Shui family and start to have ideas about Meng Qi. Don't even think about it. If you didn't pass this test, don't even think about touching Meng Qi. Hey, Chu Tianfeng suddenly took a step forward and firmly stood between Meng Qi and Shui Chengxian, separating the two without any trace of politeness. You'd better take care of your sister first. I'll wait here for Meng Qi. I don't need to worry about my sister. Meng Qi is not weaker than your sister, so she doesn't need to worry about you, Chu Tianfeng said coldly. Shui Chengxian smiled and didn't continue to argue with him. Meng Qi. He took out a roll of bamboo slips from his storage bag and handed it to Meng Qi with Chu Tianfeng between them. This is the Shui family's 100 herbs scripture. I can't make the decision to show you the Wind Alliance's scripture, but I can give you the Shui family scripture first. He paused and said, but after we leave here, I might be able to take you to the Wind Alliance's library pavilion. You have the medical letter of the senior in the Starfall Sea. Although you can't exchange it for the strongest medical skills in the Wind Alliance, the 100 Herb Scripture should be fine. Really? Meng Qi's eyes lit up. Of course. In fact, if you're still willing to join the Wind Alliance, you can use the medical letter to exchange for access to the 7th floor of the library pavilion. Shui Chengxian smiled and said, but this depends on you. If you're not willing, you can directly use the medical letter to exchange for some medical books. Oh, Meng Qi had already walked out from behind Chu Tianfeng and took the bamboo slips from Shui Chengshuan's hands. She rummaged through her storage brocade pouch. Fellow Taoist, Shui originally had a copy of the medical letter she obtained from the Starfall Sea. He could have read it at any time. It was just that he and Li Che had agreed to leave it with her first. As for the others, Meng Qi looked through them and finally took out a magic weapon. She said, this is a level 6 magic weapon. I'll give it to you. She paused and explained, there's a sword technique on it that can be activated with spirit energy. It's equivalent to a sword strike from an insightful emptiness realm sword cultivator. It's quite useful for us. Okay. Shui Chengxian took it with a smile and carefully put it away. In Meng Qi's eyes, the Shui family's 100 herb scripture was far more valuable than this level 6 magic weapon. She thought for a moment and took out another bamboo slip. She said, I organized this myself. It's the demon world's 100 herbs scripture. The Shui family definitely has better ones, but I've read a lot of unofficial history books. Maybe I can help a little. Meng Qi wasn't talking nonsense. The records about the demon world and the demon world in the bookhouse of heaven and earth were far more abundant than those in the Trichiliocosm. Okay. Shui Chengshuan's eyes curved slightly. He took the jade slip and said gently, it just so happens that I'm quite interested in the demon world's herbs. We can discuss it later. BQGXSYDW. Kami paused and said, be careful. Okay. Meng Qi nodded. I will. Fellow Taoist Shui, you don't have to wait for me here. You can go to the next level first. She said, We'll meet on the 10 Extremes Mountain. Did you hear that? Chu Tianfeng was still angry, but he immediately cheered up. She said you don't have to wait. We'll meet on the 10 Extremes Mountain. As he spoke, he pulled Meng Qi behind him again, telling her to stay away from this Shui Chengxian. Okay, Shui Chengxian nodded. I'll go to the 3rd level first to see what's going on. He cupped his hands toward the crowd and turned to walk toward the border of the grassland. Meng Qi, seeing him leave, Chu Tianfeng immediately pulled Meng Qi and lectured her. Stay away from him. This person has bad intentions toward you. Bad intentions? Meng Qi frowned. Yes. Chu Tianfeng snorted coldly. The Shui family took a fancy to your performance in the apricot forest and wanted this guy to trick you. He wants to become your Dao companion, but he's not sincere to you. He's just doing it for the family and the sect. He wants to use you. Can't you see that? Fellow Taoist Shui wants to become my Dao companion. Meng Qi froze and quickly shook her head decisively. That's impossible. Why is it impossible? Chu Tianfeng was so angry that he almost laughed. Even his younger sister said that this guy has bad intentions. Come on, let me tell you. A person like him was raised as an heir by the Wind Alliance, and the education he received since childhood is different from yours. He doesn't love his future Dao companion at all, as long as that person is useful to his family. Chu Tianfeng turned his head and pulled Qin Xiaoma over to help him. You tell Meng Qi that men don't care about anything for power, status, and strength. It's not difficult to become Dao companions with someone you don't love, right? Qin Xiaoma looked at him deeply and said, Meng Qi, Chu Tianfeng is right. But that's impossible. Meng Qi said, fellow Taoist Shui and I can't, why not? Chu Tianfeng said, what if he's despicable and shameless and does something to you? Because I already have a Dao companion. Meng Qi interrupted him and said clearly, each cultivator in the 3,000 worlds can only have one Dao companion, right? Therefore, fellow Taoist Shui and I can never become Dao companions. She came to a conclusion. Chapter 154. Let's go to the next level, Meng Qi said as she walked toward the edge of the grass. Are we still going to wait here later? As she spoke, she stood at the edge and looked back at the crowd. Let's wait. Xikong Xing stared at Meng Qi in a daze. Okay. Meng Qi nodded. She took a step forward, and her cyan-clothed figure instantly disappeared from where she stood. The remaining people stood in place and looked at each other. Chu Tianfeng's expression didn't look too good. He looked at Qin Xiaoma, then at Xikong Xing, and finally at Pei Mufeng and Li Che. Qin Xiaoma was silent. His eyelids drooped slightly, covering the light in his eyes. Li Che stood in place blankly. He looked at the place where Meng Qi disappeared, and then at Xikong Xing. What do you mean? Only Pei Mufeng's expression didn't change. He just stood in place calmly, but he didn't leave immediately. After a while, Xikong Xing couldn't help but speak first. She has a Dao companion? When did Meng Qi have a Dao companion? She still couldn't believe her ears. When did this happen? Why didn't I know about it at all? Dao companion. Chu Tianfeng stared blankly at the place where Meng Qi disappeared and suddenly jumped up. She has a Dao companion. When did this happen? Who was that guy? Could it be? His expression was uncertain, and he turned to look at Qin Xiaoma. She's been with Ji Wujiang since then. Could it be this guy? Chu Tianfeng's expression instantly became extremely ugly. Impossible. Xikong Xing said, hasn't Ji Wujiang always wanted Meng Qi to be his disciple? Ha, naive. Chu Tianfeng coldly snorted. Although the spiritual energy on that Ji Wujiang's body belongs to the cultivators of our 3,000 worlds, his style of doing things is quite similar to those unscrupulous fellows in the demon realm. Do you think he would care about a disciple? He paused for a moment and then said in a bad mood, and you saw it too. After leaving the Starfall Sea, he obviously knew something. Meng Qi suddenly got close to him and even agreed to call him master. Maybe this despicable guy is using the same method to blackmail Meng Qi again. The more Chu Tianfeng spoke, the more he felt that he was right. This guy has been pestering Meng Qi. Who knows what his purpose is? He has never been a good person. Xikong Xing. She turned and looked at Qin Xiaoma. What do you think? You forgot that in the Starfall Sea, Meng Qi was holding something in his hand. Qin Xiuma's tone was indifferent. It's more likely that it's that person. He didn't say who it was, but the few people here, except for Li Chei's two fellow disciples, almost all of them had fought side by side in the Starfall Sea. Everyone immediately reacted. But Xikong Xing was so shocked that she almost couldn't speak. After saying, "but," for a long time, she didn't continue. After a while, she shook her head desperately. But if it's that person, then she licked her dry lips. She was clearly speaking, but her voice sounded so distant. If it's that person, then Meng Qi is our... Xikong Xing still felt that it was inconceivable. Before she finished speaking, she shook her head. The Demon Lord token appeared once every 100 years in the demon realm. The great celestial demons needed to fight for the Demon Lord token again to determine the position of the Demon Lord. Therefore, although there were many geniuses in the Sky Demon White Tiger clan, and demon monarchs often appeared, they didn't occupy an absolute ruling position. Otherwise, some ambitious and powerful sky demons wouldn't be eager to make a move every time the Demon Monarch token was about to appear. Just like this time, because there was a rumor that the great sky demon Yin Qinyan, who was the demon monarch at the time, cultivated a heaven-defying formation, a great tribulation fell on him together by the will of the three realms. He failed to pass the tribulation and disappeared after being seriously injured. Those who had the ability to compete for the Demon Monarch token were all ecstatic. The situation in the demon realm changed, and all the major forces took action. The main forces in the demon realm had always been divided into three factions. One faction was the Qin clan, and was willing to join forces with the cultivators of the three realms to deal with the demon realm. They were willing to be on good terms with them, and even have normal business dealings. One faction was the demon cultivators who remained neutral. They didn't like or dislike the cultivators of the three realms, but they wouldn't harm the human race either. Another faction felt that the demon cultivators were the masters of heaven and earth. They never looked down on the cultivators of the three realms. Of course, they also looked down on the demon cultivators. Yin Xinyan didn't directly express his support for the cultivators of the three realms, but his trusted subordinate, Su Junmo, stayed in the three realms for a long time. He was relatively friendly to the three realms. When he was the demon monarch, he was very straightforward and didn't do anything to govern. He didn't restrict the affairs of the various races of the demon realm and allowed them to develop freely. Therefore, most of the great sky demon cultivators put him in the first faction. Those Yao who wanted to develop and strengthen the demon realm and have the demon cultivators become the masters of the world naturally didn't like his conduct. But Yin Qinyan was too strong. Xikong Xing had never seen Yin Qinyan fight, but she had heard the elders of the clan mention Yin Qinyan's genius and strength countless times. This was the youngest demon monarch in the history of the demon realm. He was so strong that even the Yao cultivators who opposed him had to admit that if the demon realm could produce a great sky demon cultivator who could step through the void and ascend, it would be Yin Qinyan. What Xikong Xing heard about Yin Qinyan was a glorious legend for hundreds of years. It was said that he had never been defeated in a fight. Ever since he obtained the Demon Monarch token for the first time 300 years ago, those great sky demons who originally had ambitions for the Demon Monarch token no longer dared to act rashly. There were as many Yao cultivators in the demon realm who admired him as there were stars in the sky. They could be ranked from the first heaven to the ninth heaven of the demon realm, and so on. But such a powerful Yin Qinyan had actually been injured, and he was seriously injured. A year ago, when such a rumor first spread in the demon realm, no Yao cultivator believed it. Xikong Xing had also heard about it. Although her father didn't participate in the management of the Scarlet Fox clan's affairs, he was still a Scarlet Fox aristocrat. But at the time, even the Scarlet Fox clan didn't dare to believe it. In their eyes, the fact that Yin Qinyan was injured was a big joke and a lie. Anyone who had seen him in action before wouldn't believe such a lie. Those Yao cultivators who didn't dare to compete with Yin Qinyan for the position of Demon Monarch, but still had ambitions for the position, even started to become vigilant. They felt that this was a rumor deliberately spread by Yun Qingyan to lure the snake out of its hole. He wanted to capture all the ambitious great sky demons in one fell swoop. During that time, they became more and more respectful and cautious. They didn't even dare to reveal their ambitions in their sleep. But slowly, this rumor became more and more intense. Yun Qingyan didn't appear in front of everyone again. Some ceremonies that had to be presided over by the demon monarch were also handed over to his subordinates or the elders of the White Tiger clan. About a year ago, the oldest elder of the celestial demon phoenix clan had successfully undergone 8 nirvanas. He already had one hand on the edge of the heavenly Tao and could step into the Mahayana realm after 1 more nirvanas. At his 1,600th birthday banquet, which was also the day he successfully underwent 8 nirvanas, Yun Qingyan was absent again. This time, the voices of the demon realm started to change slightly. As a demon monarch, Yun Qingyan was the true king of all demons in the demon realm. He didn't have to participate in any banquets that he didn't want to. However, this celestial demon phoenix clan elder was also the oldest elder in the demon realm. Before Yun Qingyan became a demon monarch, he once found a young genius of the Phoenix clan who was as famous as him. The two of them fought under the Phoenix tree for 7 days and 7 nights. In the end, not only did he defeat that person, but he also took a branch from the Phoenix tree and left. That battle made Yun Qingyan completely famous, and it also made the patriarch of the Phoenix clan a little angry. However, this elder wasn't angry. Instead, he smiled and sent someone to deliver the array formation that the Phoenix clan used to refine Dharma treasures with phoenix branches. This was the world's famous true array formation of the Great Fire Ray. Only this powerful fire, which could burn all things, could refine the world's hardest phoenix tree into the shape that cultivators needed. Although the Great Fire Ray had always existed in the outside world, only the Phoenix clan knew how to make true arrays. The great celestial demon elder said that the various clans of the demon realm had been fighting since ancient times. However, these fights weren't for the sake of demon cultivators fighting to the death. Instead, they were for the sake of making the demon realm more prosperous and powerful. Therefore, he didn't wish for this matter to cause any rift between the 2 young celestial demon royals. After Yun Qingyan learned of this, he personally went to thank him. The 2 of them drank and chatted merrily under the Phoenix tree. Later on, Yun Qingyan would definitely attend the Phoenix clan elder's decennial birthday banquet. Even after he obtained the Demon Monarch token and became a Demon Monarch, this never changed. Therefore, everyone felt that something was amiss when Yun Qingyan didn't attend the Phoenix clan elder's 1,600th birthday banquet and the 8 successful nirvanic rebirths. The celestial demon White Tiger clan sent gifts. They even specially said that a portion of the gifts were sent by the demon monarch. Yun Qingyan happened to be in seclusion and was unable to come. However, after the Phoenix clan elder's birthday banquet, the ambitions that some demon cultivators had suppressed for hundreds of years suddenly sprouted like seeds that had encountered the spring rain. They didn't dare to do anything to Yun Qingyan immediately. To be cautious, some great celestial demons tried to use the boundary crack between the Trichiliocosm and the demon realm to send some ferocious demon cultivators over. Although Yun Qingyan didn't care much about the development of the various clans of the demon realm in the demon realm, he never allowed them to cross the boundary and invade the cultivators of the Trichiliocosm, especially those demon cultivators who crossed the boundary. They were often ordinary or weak cultivators at the chi refinement and foundation establishment stages. In the past, when such a thing happened, the demon cultivators who were caught crossing the boundary only had one word to say: death. But this time he didn't care. Those great celestial demons even deliberately sent the demon cultivators they sent over to do some excessive things in the Trichiliocosm, such as hurting a few disciples of the top 10 sections. They also knew that one of Yun Qingyan's trusted subordinates, White Fox Su Junmo, was in the Trichiliocosm all year round. These matters would definitely reach his ears. Unexpectedly, Yun Qingyan still didn't care. Rumors of the demon monarch's injury spread once again. More and more ambitious people became restless. They researched the rumors of the demon lord's injuries over and over again. In the end, they came to the conclusion that Yun Qingyan might really have been severely injured by the will of the three realms. It was very likely that he would never recover. Those great celestial demons who had ambitions for the position of demon monarch were overjoyed. Seeing that the demon monarch token was about to reappear in less than a year, they began to prepare frantically. In the beginning, everyone was worried that Yun Qingyan would suddenly appear and capture them all. But as time passed, not only did Yun Qingyan not appear, even the celestial demon White Tiger Clan fell silent. Those great celestial demons became increasingly arrogant. In the past year, the demon realm had changed. Even Xikong Xing's father felt some pressure. Xikong Xing's mother was a cultivator from the Trichiliocosm. Her father didn't participate in the management of the clan's affairs and wasn't even a member of the Council of Elders. Their family had always been ostracized in the clan because of this reason. The Crimson Fox clan was definitely the third faction. They looked down on the human race from the bottom of their hearts. Later, Xikong Xing followed her clan brother, who she didn't like, to the Trichiliocosm to find her mother, whom she had never met. She had never thought of doing evil with her clan brother and harming the human race. So when she met Meng Qi and the others, she willingly left with her. She didn't expect that she would come to this day. These things quickly flashed through her mind. This was what her father told her the night before she left the demon realm. He also told her that if the real demon lord was replaced by someone else, then Xikong Xing shouldn't return to the demon realm. If she could find her mother, she would stay by her mother's side. If she couldn't find her, he gave her a lot of spirit stones. It was enough for her to live a good life in the Trichiliocosm. Xikong Xing thought of the serious and melancholy expression on her father's face when she left. Of course, she wouldn't leave her father alone in the demon realm, but she still came to the Trichiliocosm. She also wanted to find her mother, whom she had never seen before, and ask her if she was willing to be with her and her father. If she wasn't willing, she would return to the demon realm. Even if the world there turned upside down, she would stay by her father's side. Xikong Xing. Xikong. A hand waved in front of Xikong Xing. She came back to her senses and met Chu Tianfeng's slightly furrowed brows. What? What are you thinking? Chu Tianfeng looked at her suspiciously. Do you know something? Xikong Xing opened her mouth. The gazes of the people around her were all focused on her. These people were indeed her life and death friends, but they were only cultivators from the Trichiliocosm. Xikong Xing hesitated. Regarding the demon realm's battle of the demon monarchs, even she could only hear about it from others. Wouldn't it be useless to tell them? Ranwen, why did you stop halfway? Chu Tianfeng frowned and asked casually, what is Meng Qi to you? The demon empress. Xikong Xing said in a small voice. Chu Tianfeng. Chu Tianfeng what? If it's that lord, Meng Qi should be our demon empress. Xikong Xing took a deep breath. The demon lord token appears once in 100 years, and it happens to be now. It's time for the demon lord token to reappear and fight for the position of the demon lord. She decided to tell these friends what she knew. After all, it was about Meng Qi. Moreover, Xikong Xing's gaze swept across the faces of these friends. In fact, for people like Pei Mufeng and Li Che, they didn't say much. But probably because they had experienced life and death together and fought side by side in the Starfall Sea, and they were all friends of Meng Qi, she was willing to believe them. Before the new demon lord appears, if Meng Qi really becomes Dao companions with that lord, then she will be our demon empress. Xikong Xing still felt a little awkward calling Meng Qi this way. Chu Tianfeng. He sucked in a breath of cold air and suddenly asked, but hasn't your Yao monarch been a Yao monarch for 300 years? Doesn't he have any other women? Didn't you say that your great heaven demons can have many women, just like the Lord of the Devil Mansion and the great realm masters of the Devil Realm? Chu Tianfeng's tone became anxious. Here, we can only have one Dao companion after becoming Dao companions. No. Xikong Xing's face darkened. The current demon lord is from the heaven demon White Tiger race. So what? Chu Tianfeng was stunned and didn't understand. The Heaven Demon White Tiger race has produced many demon lords, but they have never had other concubines. There's only one demon empress, Sikong Xing said. She snorted and couldn't help but say, "Don't think I don't know. Although there can only be one Tao companion in the 3,000 worlds, many cultivators still have concubines. Their Tao companion might not even be their official wife. They just cultivate together." Sikong Xing paused and said, "For us demon cultivators, Tao companions are wives. The demon lord's Tao companion must be the demon empress." Sigh. She waved her hand. "Why did you interrupt me just now? What I wanted to say was, if Meng Qi really became Tao companions with the demon lord, then the demon realm should have a demon empress now. Even if I'm in the 3,000 worlds, it's impossible for me to not know about this. This is a major event, second only to the demon lord's ascension. Even if I don't know, Su Junmo definitely knows and will tell me." "I see." Chu Tianfeng nodded thoughtfully. "So you don't think it's that person?" "It shouldn't be," Sikong Xing said. "So, is it really that bastard Ji Wujiang?" Chu Tianfeng was about to go crazy again. "I definitely won't accept it. That guy doesn't look like a good person. He's too evil. Meng Qi might as well be with that hypocritical Shui Chengxian than with him." Sikong Xing. Xing's words also make sense. Besides, the demon lord should be in the demon realm now. Meng Qi probably hasn't seen him for a long time. Qin Xiuma's tone was still calm. As he spoke, he turned his head and looked at Pei Mufeng thoughtfully. Chu Tianfeng followed his gaze and was stunned. "Could it be you?" "It's not me," Pei Mufeng said lightly. Chu Tianfeng simply looked at Su Zijuan standing beside Pei Mufeng. "It's not me." Su Zijuan shook his head repeatedly. "How could it be me?" Chu Tianfeng looked at Li Che. "It's not me, it's not me." Li Che shook his head quickly. "Then who could it be?" Chu Tianfeng frowned and finally looked at Yin Xian, who no one was familiar with. This young master of Mirror Moon Sky didn't say much from the beginning. After Meng Qi left, he was silent and stood at the edge of the group. But Meng Qi's relationship with him was obviously good. "Could it be you?" Chu Tianfeng looked at Yin Xian and asked. His tone wasn't rude. After all, they all knew that Yin Xian became like this because he was exhausted and seriously injured from stopping the invasion of the demon realm. "No," Yin Xian said coldly. "But do you know the Broken Space Sect?" "Broken Space Sect?" Chu Tianfeng was stunned and looked back at Qin Xiuma. "Of course I know. But what did the Broken Space Sect have to do with Meng Qi? Before we entered the 10 Extremes Mountain, the Broken Space Sect chose a new sect master, Ling Ji." Yin Xian said. "He personally came to see Meng Qi." Chu Tianfeng. He was tongue-tied. "But Ling Ji is more than 20 years older than Meng Qi. He's the sect master of the Broken Space Sect, an expert of the insightful truth realm. It's not an exaggeration to say that he's the best swordsman in the world." Yin Xian said, "If you've seen him, you'll know that a difference of more than 20 years is nothing to him." "I remember now," Chu Tianfeng suddenly said. "The Broken Space Sect sent people to find Meng Qi, so he was tongue-tied. No way. Could it really be him? Who knows?" Yin Xian said as he walked toward the edge of the grassland. "Instead of thinking here, why don't we wait for Meng Qi to come out and ask him directly? If we don't go to the next stage, he'll probably come out." As he spoke, he took a step forward and disappeared from the edge of the grassland. "He's really..." Chu Tianfeng stared at the place where he disappeared. "He's a bit arrogant. He's a genius to begin with, so he's qualified." Pei Mufeng's tone was still indifferent. "Let's go too." As he spoke, he stepped forward and also disappeared from the edge of the grassland. "I'm going too," Sikong Xing said. "Meng Qi seems to value this trip to the 10 Extremes Mountain very much. I have to help him as much as I can." After the red-clothed girl finished speaking, her figure flashed and she left the grassland. "Meng Qi has helped me a lot, and this time, he saved me again. I have to help him as much as I can." Li Che also hurriedly followed. Soon, the other two disciples from the Surging Waves Academy and the Falling Star Pavilion also left the grassland. Only Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiumo remained. What do you think? Chu Tianfeng grabbed his hair in annoyance. Qin Xiuma's tone was a bit cold. If it's really Ji Wujiong, can you beat him now? If you don't agree, what's the use? So after this 10 extremes mountain, our cultivation will directly increase by a large realm. He said, at that time, we'll have the qualifications to decide what to do. Let's go, let's go. Chu Tianfeng didn't hesitate anymore and strode towards the edge of the grassland. Qin Xiuma watched him leave, but he didn't move. After a while, 2 men wearing black robes like him walked towards him. Junior brother Qin. The man walking on the left smiled slightly and greeted him. When you suddenly disappeared, I thought you... Before the man could finish his sentence, he suddenly took a few steps back, and a trace of anger flashed across his face. Junior brother Qin, what are you doing? As he spoke, he panted and looked at Qin Xiuma's eyes, and a trace of panic quickly flashed across his face. The other man beside him was Wei Yuanzhong, whom Meng Qi had seen that day at Mirror Moon Sky. Junior brother Qin. Wei Yuanzhong also frowned. What are you doing? Junior brother Zhao is also concerned about you. Concerned, Qin Xiuma put his right index and middle fingers together and lightly flicked. Cloud Treading Peak was a rare sect that cultivated both sword and art. In general, they mainly cultivated the sword, and magic arts were secondary. His life-bound sword silently floated in the air, and the tip of the sword flashed with a bit of cold light, pointing directly at Zhao Jianian, who had spoken to him at the beginning. Speaking of which, I should be grateful to senior brother Zhao. Qin Xiuma's lips curved slightly, but there was no smile on his face. His gaze was extremely cold, and like his extremely sharp life-bound sword, it flashed with cold light. He looked at Zhao Jianian like this, and said coldly, otherwise, there wouldn't be this. Qin Xiuma's last 2 words were very vague, and his voice was very low. Wei Yuanzhong reflexively asked, what? Encounter. He slowly said, but the movements of his hands were not slow at all. His life-bound sword was wrapped in a sharp aura, and as fast as lightning, it stabbed toward Zhao Jianian. Zhao Jianian was shocked. This sword was really too fast, so fast that in the blink of an eye, he didn't even hear Qin Xiuma's 2 words, and the cold sword was already in front of him. He already knew that his talent was inferior to Qin Xiuma, and he also knew that junior brother Qin was the one that Master truly valued, and was the future sect master in Master's heart. But why? Junior brother Qin had clearly entered the sect later than him, and before he entered, he was the most outstanding of the younger generation of disciples, and the one that Master valued the most. And he had already worked hard enough. His talent was just a bit lacking, but he was already second in the sect, wasn't he? Zhao Jianian's expression also darkened. Even if he lost to this junior brother Qin by a bit, the gap between the 2 of them wouldn't be too great. It was only because Master was biased that he said that junior brother Qin's future was limitless, and that they would be left far behind. Zhao Jianian summoned his life-bound sword, preparing to counterattack, and said loudly, eldest senior brother, you see, it's him. He didn't even have time to finish his sentence before there was a long ding sound, and the 2's life-bound sword had already clashed dozens of times in an instant. But because Qin Xiuma's sword was too fast and too terrifying, like lightning, it only sounded like a long sound. Zhao Jianian didn't dare to speak, and gritted his teeth to block with all his might. So fast. Junior brother Qin's sword was really fast, and so strong. In just a moment, the back of Zhao Jianian's robe was soaked. The life-bound sword was connected to its master's mind, and Qin Xiuma's strike after strike against his sword also seemed to be attacking his divine sense. So strong, he was going to lose. Zhao Jianian's face was ashen. It had only been a year. So how did junior brother Qin become so strong? He couldn't believe it. He couldn't be so strong and improve so quickly. Junior brother Qin. Wei Yuanzhong finally realized that something was wrong. This junior brother, who had disappeared for a year, really wanted junior brother Zhao Jianian's life. He hurriedly waved his fingers, and his life-bound sword appeared next to him. Stop first, or I'll attack, Wei Yuanzhong said. I'll count to 3. Junior brother Qin, If you don't withdraw your sword, I'll attack. 1. As he spoke, he anxiously looked at Qin Xiaoma, and then at Zhao Jianian with worry. Zhao Jianian suddenly grunted as Qin Xiaoma's sword slashed across his left arm. Although he blocked quickly, a string of blood still rolled down his arm. 2. Wei Yuanzhong hurriedly counted again. Junior brother Qin, we're all from the same sect, so what can't we talk about? You stop first. Ugh, Zhao Jianian grunted again. This time, Qin Xiaoma's shoulder slashed across his left leg, leaving behind 2 deep and narrow wounds. So fast, Zhao Jianian's face was pale. He found that he could barely see junior brother Qin's sword. His opponent's life-bound sword seemed to transform into sword shadows, and it even carried a biting cold air. Not only were his wounds very painful, they were also very cold. Even his blood seemed to be frozen into ice. What was eldest senior brother doing? Why wasn't he counting to 3? Zhao Jianian became anxious. He was definitely not junior brother Qin's match, but if eldest senior brother joined forces with him, then he would have a chance. No matter how much Qin Xiaoma improved in this year, he couldn't be stronger than him and his senior brother joining forces. When the time came, he could wait for junior brother Qin to be suppressed, then pretend that he wasn't in a hurry to withdraw his sword. After all, this was 10 Extremes Mountain. No matter what happened, no one would know. 3. Wei Yuanzhong counted loudly. Junior brother Qin, you should stop. Okay. Qin Xiaoma suddenly responded crisply. This time, both Zhao Jianian and Wei Yuanzhong were stunned. Qin Xiaoma's life-bound sword had already been withdrawn. Zhao Jianian's pressure was greatly reduced, and he stood in place, stunned. Wei Yuanzhong's life-bound sword was already about to attack, but he hurriedly called it back. He revealed a slight smile and looked at his 2 junior brothers. That's right. What kind of misunderstanding can't be cleared up between fellow disciples? Zhao Jianian snorted coldly. The 3 wounds on his body were still bleeding, and the coldness in his wounds was getting thicker and thicker, making him feel very uncomfortable. However, he knew that junior brother Qin wouldn't dare to attack with him and eldest senior brother at the same time. Oomph. He snorted coldly in his heart. His life-bound sword was still hanging by his side. With eldest senior brother here, he wasn't worried that Qin Xiaoma would do anything else. As Zhao Jianian thought this, he took out some medicine for external injuries from his storage bag and prepared to bandage his wounds first. Junior brother Qin, Wei Yuanzhong said warmly. What happened? Where did you go this year? We couldn't find you, and Master was very worried. Later, we heard that you were together with that medical cultivator girl, and everyone went to Starfall City to look for you. That's right, Wei Yuanzhong said as he looked at Zhao Jianian. Is there some misunderstanding between you and junior brother Zhao? Weren't you 2 very close in the past? Junior brother might have misunderstood me. As Zhao Jianian treated his wounds, he glanced at Qin Xiaoma and said, at the time, junior brother was going through his tribulation. I said that I would protect junior brother, but that day, Master sent me to do something. I originally thought that I would be able to rush back before junior brother's tribulation, but who knew? He sighed and looked into Qin Xiaoma's eyes. He said sincerely, this matter was indeed senior brother's fault. Later, junior brother disappeared, and Master severely punished senior brother. Junior brother, now you have already. He tilted his head slightly, and his expression turned cold. In just a year, Qin Xiaoma had already reached the spirit-severing stage. And it seemed that he had not just entered the spirit-severing stage. Was this guy a lunatic? When he left, he was clearly not even a nascent soul cultivator. Yes, Wei Yuanzhong also echoed. Master did severely punish junior brother Zhao and made him face the wall for 8 months. Later, he even sent him everywhere to look for you. Junior brother Qin, let's forget about this matter. Your senior brother also knows that he was wrong. Your relationship in the past was so good, and he didn't do it on purpose. Moreover, junior brother Qin, when you reached the nascent soul stage from the golden core stage, everyone thought that it was a small matter for you. Wei Yuanzhong really felt that Qin Xiaoma was making a big fuss over nothing. Although Zhao Jianian did not do right in this matter, it was only a tribulation from the golden core stage to the nascent soul stage. Qin Xiaoma was also a famous genius disciple in the sect. Everyone thought that this was a very easy matter for him. Even if there was no one to protect him, it was not a big deal. Later, Qin Xiaoma really failed to pass the tribulation and even went into Qi deviation. Their fellow disciples at the cloud-treading peak were all stunned. This disciple who was doted on the most by Master turned out to be nothing more than this? So later, Zhao Jianian cried and knelt in front of Master, begging him to punish him because he promised to protect his junior brother. In the end, because he went to do something Master asked him to do, he was delayed a little and did not return in time. To be honest, everyone, including Wei Yuanzhong, was a little disapproving. Even if Zhao Jianian returned in time, for something like tribulation transcendence, if you failed, you failed. The help your fellow disciples could provide was too limited. Everyone even comforted Zhao Jianian, who was in pain and self-blame, and advised him not to be sad. As long as they could find Qin Xiaoma and bring him back, Master would have a way to save him. Wei Yuanzhong also thought so. He really did not feel that junior brother Zhao Jianian had done too much wrong. Moreover, after Qin Xiaoma went missing, Wei Yuanzhong also saw his self-blame and pain. He knew that his two junior brothers had a very good relationship, and even often comforted Zhao Jianian, telling him to pull himself together as soon as possible. Wei Yuanzhong never would have thought that for such a small matter, Qin Xiaoma would actually directly attack, without saying anything, and even injure Zhao Jianian in the blink of an eye. I heard that senior brother, Zhao, already got married? Qin Xiaoma did not directly answer this question. He faintly glanced at Zhao Jianian, his gaze still very cold. Yes, Zhao Jianian also did not know what he was thinking, and could only say, junior brother was unable to make it to this wedding banquet. After we leave 10 Extremes Mountain, senior brother will treat us, and we will not return until we are drunk. Wei Yuanzhong also revealed a smile. Junior brother Zhao's Dao companion is a famous beauty in the southern land. Junior brother Qin should also know. He paused, and seeing that the atmosphere was already much more harmonious than before, he also relaxed a little. Speaking of which, if junior brother Qin meets a female cultivator he likes, you can also find a Dao companion. Wei Yuanzhong looked at Qin Xiaoma and laughed a little mockingly. That little medical cultivator just now, she seems pretty good. Her heart is also good, When he said this, he suddenly remembered that his usually proud junior brother actually helped that medical cultivator girl collect spirit stones, and felt a bit awkward. However, it could also be seen that this junior brother Qin really treated her well. She's pretty good. Qin Xiaoma smiled. Seeing him also smile, Wei Yuanzhong relaxed even more. Even Zhao Jianian let out a slight sigh of relief. It seemed that junior brother Qin did not know that he was the one who did that. He was just angry that he did not come back as promised. Thinking like this, even his wound did not hurt as much. It should be the medicine that worked. Ha! Zhao Jianian laughed. If junior brother really likes that girl, when we leave 10 Extremes Mountain, we can bring her back to the southern land. She isn't a cultivator from the southern land, right? Which sect is she from? He remembered that Meng Qi seemed to be quite familiar with Xue Chengxian just now, and she was also a medical cultivator. He asked, is she a disciple of the Wind Alliance? No, Qin Xiaoma said. Junior brother, you can't be like this. It's fine if you're a bit colder in front of us and speak less. However, in front of that girl, you have to be more proactive. Zhao Jianian said with a laugh. Later, senior brother will slowly teach you. Huh? Qin Xiaoma laughed lightly. Zhao Jianian was even happier seeing this. Even though he knew that Qin Xiaoma had gone mad after failing his tribulation, he was still very scared that he had not seen him alive or dead. He was scared that one day, this junior brother Qin would suddenly pop out of nowhere and kill him. Now, seeing that Qin Xiaoma was still willing to talk to him and smile at him, even though he was not dead and had become stronger, Zhao Jianian was very displeased. However, it was better than dying under his sword. Also, since he did not know that he did it, then he could... It's about time. Before Zhao Jianian finished thinking, he suddenly heard Qin Xiaoma say, "What?" He reflexively asked. What greeted him was a sword light that was even faster and sharper than before. This time, even Wei Yuanzhong did not have time to react. Qin Xiaoma's life-bound longsword had already pierced through Zhao Jianian's neck. This sword was really too fast and too sudden. Zhao Jianian's face even carried a smile. He opened his eyes wide in disbelief. This junior brother Qin actually killed him in front of their eldest senior brother. How dare he? Zhao Jianian's throat made a gurgling sound, but he could no longer utter a complete syllable. Actually, even if he suffered such a heavy injury, he might not necessarily die. In his storage brocade pouch, there were still the life-saving medicinal pills that Master had given them before entering 10 Extremes Mountain. As long as he could, Zhao Jianian moved his fingers, but suddenly discovered that his entire body had frozen. Even his spiritual sea and spiritual energy had been frozen into ice. Forget about taking medicine from his storage brocade pouch. He could not even bend his fingers. Gurgling, his throat still made a sound, desperately trying to make a sound. Junior brother Qin Yu, Wei Yuanzhong, was indescribably shocked and furious. You actually treat your own senior brother like this? Your own fellow disciple? As he spoke, he quickly took out a small porcelain bottle from his storage brocade pouch. He poured out the medicine inside, wanting to stuff it into Zhao Jianian's mouth. Ugh! Wei Yuanzhong suddenly groaned. His body went limp, and he fell to the ground. The medicinal pill in his hand rolled onto the grass, rolling to the side. Qin Xiaoma slowly walked forward, picking up that medicinal pill. He brought it to his nose and sniffed. 9 returning yang pill. Qin Xiaoma flicked his finger, throwing it to Wei Yuanzhong's side. He coldly said, "Right now, even a rebirth pill can't save his life." Wei Yuanzhong only had no strength left in his body, but his mind was still clear, and he could still speak. "Why did you do this to us?" Qin Xiaoma did not speak. He only stood at the side, coldly looking at the deathly pale Zhao Jianian. "I wanted to kill him, so I killed him," he indifferently said, "so he wouldn't get in the way." "Get in the way?" Wei Yuanzhong stared blankly, then suddenly exploded in anger. "In order to ascend 10 Extremes Mountain, you killed your own senior brother? You devil!" He completely did not dare to believe it. Even if his junior brother Qin used to be rather cold and arrogant, and was also known as a genius in the main sect, he had always been alone and had very few friends. But he always felt that this junior brother of his was not a cruel and heartless person. "Why didn't you kill me as well?" Wei Yuanzhong sternly asked. Qin Xiaoma, "As long as I don't die, I will definitely kill you to get rid of evil for the main sect." Qin Xiaoma coldly glanced at him. His life-bound longsword was still suspended in the air, but did not stab towards Wei Yuanzhong. "Heh!" Wei Yuanzhong coldly laughed. "That medical cultivator girl, she didn't ask about our origins, didn't ask about our identities, and saved all of us in one go." When Qin Xiaoma heard him mention Meng Qi, the corners of his lips almost imperceptibly rose in a gentle arc. "She has always been this kind of person. How could she possibly fall for a demon like you? If she knew what you did, she would definitely." Wei Yuanzhong suddenly stopped halfway through his words. His eyes widened as he watched the woman in green slowly walk over from behind Qin Xiaoma. That person was Meng Qi. Is this the person? Meng Qi had already come out of the 2nd level. As Shui Changxian said, it was indeed very simple. It was to test their knowledge of spiritual herbs and spiritual flowers. In the 2nd level, there were many square lattice floors. On each floor, there was a spiritual herb or spiritual flower painted. The brushes were vivid and lifelike. With every step Meng Qi took, new questions would appear on the sky in front of her. She only needed to choose the right floor with the correct spiritual herbs and spiritual flowers according to those questions, and there would be no danger at all. Meng Qi passed through the 2nd level unimpeded all the way. As soon as she came out, she happened to see Wei Yuanzhong fall down. She also heard the conversation between the two. Meng Qi looked at Zhao Jianian, who who was stiff all over. Although the other party's expression looked a little scary, she naturally understood when she saw that he was wearing the same robe as Wei Yuanzhong. She glanced at Wei Yuanzhong and knew that Qin Xiaoma didn't want to kill him. He just wanted to make him unable to move temporarily. Yes. Hearing Meng Qi's question, Qin Xiaoma hesitated for a moment and nodded. Oh. Meng Qi took a few steps forward, leaned over, and gently pressed on Zhao Jianyan's wrist. Fellow Taoist Meng. Seeing this, Wei Yuanzhong hurriedly said, "Please save him. You can definitely save him. He's already dead." Meng Qi stood up. Wei Yuanzhong. So fast. He was poisoned and his vitals were injured. Meng Qi said as she glanced at the 9-yang restoration pill and said, "It's useless even with the 9-yang restoration pill." She leaned over and picked up the pill, put it in a porcelain bottle, and put it on Wei Yuanzhong's body. She said, "This is a pill refined by the Wind Alliance. It's quite effective." Fellow Taoist Meng. Wei Yuanzhong finally calmed down. They had just entered the 10 Extremes mountain and hadn't even passed the second level. They hadn't even reached the foot of the mountain, but his junior martial brother was already dead. Moreover, he died in the hands of another junior martial brother. Wei Yuanzhong only felt like crying, but had no tears. He simply didn't know how to explain this to his master. "You." He opened his mouth with difficulty, looked at Meng Qi, and then looked at Qin Xiaoma. He took a deep breath and said, "My junior martial brother was killed by junior martial brother Qin. Fellow Taoist Meng, I can't repay the favor of detoxifying and saving my life. However, you shouldn't get too close to such a temperamental villain." Wei Yuanzhong gritted his teeth and said, "After all, who knows when he'll feel that you're in his way and want to kill you." Right now, he still couldn't move, and he also knew that his life was still in the hands of Qin Xiaoma. However, although Meng Qi just took a mystic spirit stone from them, she did indeed save his life. Secondly, Wei Yuanzhong only felt like he was about to explode from holding it in. However, if he didn't say this, he was worried that he would suffer internal injuries and damage his Tao heart. Meng Qi nodded. "I know." She paused and said, "Previously, when Qin Xiaoma was transcending the tribulation, this person," Meng Qi didn't know Zhao Jianyan's name. She turned her head and glanced at Qin Xiaoma and asked, "What's his name?" "Zhao Jianyan." This fellow Taoist, Zhao Jianyan, didn't care about the friendship of fellow disciples. At the most dangerous moment, he stabbed him in the back. Meng Qi continued. "Huh?" Wei Yuanzhong was stunned. "The two of you cultivate sword techniques at the peak of the cloud-treading peak." Meng Qi continued. "Spells tend to belong to the water-type lineage. When transcending the tribulation, not to mention the fire poison entering the body, even if there were a few basins of charcoal around you, it would be much more dangerous." He was probably afraid that Qin Xiaoma wouldn't die, so he added another palm strike after he was injured, messing up his spirit energy and making him unable to save himself. She had treated Qin Xiaoma's injuries before, so she knew how serious his injuries were at that time. If it wasn't for the cool breeze Valley's cold pond and Qin Xiaoma's good luck, there would probably be nothing left of him now. So, isn't it right for him to kill him to take revenge? Meng Qi said. Wei Yuanzhong looked at Meng Qi in a daze. In fact, he was almost convinced. Meng Qi had just saved them, and there were many rumors about this medical cultivator in the Trichiliocosm. No one said anything bad about her. But Wei Yuanzhong opened his mouth. But this might just be his one-sided story. He didn't say anything. Meng Qi said, "I was the one who treated his injuries. I saw it myself." Qin Xiaoma's left hand, which was hanging by his side, clenched into a fist and then slowly relaxed. But Wei Yuanzhong opened his mouth. He felt that he should say something, but he didn't know what to say. He didn't even know who he was trying to convince. "Why are you telling me this?" After a long while, Wei Yuanzhong suddenly murmured. Meng Qi frowned slightly. Before she could say anything, another figure appeared at the edge of the grassland, not far from her. Junior Sister Meng? That person was wearing a long pink dress. Her waist was slender, and her facial features were exquisite. Her long black hair was tied up and pinned up with a jade hairpin. Probably because she had been working hard recently, she looked thinner, but she looked more delicate and cute. That person was none other than Lu Qingran. Qin. After Lu Qingran called out to Meng Qi, her gaze quickly turned to Qin Xiaoma. When she thought of Qin Xiaoma's harsh words to her, she blushed and hurriedly looked away. Big Brother Jianian. Lu Qingran suddenly saw Zhao Jianian lying dead on the ground. She screamed and stumbled over to his corpse. Big Brother Jianian. She knelt beside Zhao Jianian and shook his shoulders a few times. She cried out in disbelief. Big Brother Jianian, what happened to you? She seemed to have just reacted and reached out to press on Zhao Jianian's wrist. Woo! Lu Qingran's tears fell. What happened? Why did Big Brother Jianian die here? Big Brother Jianian, she cried out in a choked voice as she turned to look at Wei Yuanzhong, who was lying at the side. Lu Qingran seemed to be a little afraid of Wei Yuanzhong. Although he was lying motionless, her body still subconsciously shrank back. Wei Yuanzhong sighed and didn't say anything. Big Brother Jianian, how could he? Lu Qingran muttered. He's so powerful. How could he? Why excess? It's a long story. Wei Yuanzhong already believed Meng Qi. Actually, the main reason was that Qin Xiaoma didn't kill him. If he really wanted to kill his fellow sect members because of Shiju Mountain, then even if he didn't kill him, he could have seriously injured him. But now, Wei Yuanzhong could clearly feel that the spiritual energy in his body wasn't stagnant at all. He reckoned that he would be able to move after a while. But, Lu Qingran's tears rolled down her pretty face. Big Brother Jianian is such a good person. Why would someone kill him? Why would there be such a cruel person? With a face full of disbelief, she suddenly turned to look at Meng Qi and Qin Xiaoma. Who killed Big Brother Jianian? Lu Qingran asked. Meng Qi. She was actually quite convinced. Not long ago, when she met her, wasn't she still in the restaurant with Wei Yuanzhong? Now, she kept calling him Big Brother Jianian. This Zhao Jianian, he had a Dao companion, right? Meng Qi remembered. She even went to treat his pregnant wife, who was poisoned and was about to give birth. Then, she was unlucky enough to meet Qin Xiaoma, who came to take revenge. Meng Qi remembered that Madame Zhao told her that she and Zhao Jianian were childhood sweethearts who cultivated together and were very close to each other. She even remembered the light on Madame Zhao's face when she said that. She was poisoned and pregnant, so her skin was dark and a little scary. But as long as Zhao Jianian was mentioned, her eyes would really light up. Her expression was also gentle and happy. As a bystander, Meng Qi could feel her sweetness. So she also had a deep impression of him. Seeing that Meng Qi and Qin Xiaoma were ignoring her, Lu Qingran slowly stood up and used her sleeve to wipe her tears. But her eyelashes were still wet. Just now, she cried, so her eyes were also red. Even the tip of her nose was red. In addition, Lu Qingran was originally very beautiful. Because of this, she looked even more like a pear blossom with tears, making people feel pity for her. At this time, there were already some cultivators who passed the second round and returned to the grassland. They all saw the situation here and subconsciously came over to surround them. Did you kill Big Brother Jianian? Lu Qingran asked. As she spoke, she opened her hand, and a medicine knife appeared in her hand. Fellow Taoist Lu. Wei Yuanzhong was still lying down and couldn't move, so he hurriedly dissuaded her. This matter is very complicated. Don't be rash. He also saw the cultivators who surrounded them. Dirty linen shouldn't be aired in public. He couldn't talk about his shitty scandal in front of these people. Even if they didn't remember anything after leaving Shiju Mountain, Wei Yuanzhong couldn't say it. I want to avenge Big Brother Jianian. Lu Qingran stubbornly said, he can't die so innocently. Wei Yuanzhong, it's you, right? Lu Qingran gritted her teeth and looked at Meng Qi hatefully. Why? Junior Marshal Sister Meng, why did you kill him? Did you? Speaking up to here, she suddenly choked with sobs. Do you want to snatch away all the people who are good to me? If you can't snatch them away, you'll have to kill them before you're satisfied? Meng Qi. I killed him. Qin Xiaoma stepped forward and said coldly, "Do you want to take revenge?" With a flick of his finger, his life-bound long sword instantly appeared beside him. The tip of the sword was cold. Seeing this, Lu Qingran shrank back in fear. She quickly stood up again and said loudly, "Even if you kill me, I still want to ask, why did you kill Big Brother Jinian? Isn't he your senior martial brother? What did he do that you could kill a fellow disciple like this?" Qin Xiaoma coldly looked at Lu Qingran and didn't explain. But under his gaze, Lu Qingran couldn't help but take 2 steps back. "Meng Qi, fellow Taoist Lu, I'm sure you still remember where we met Qin Xiaoma that day." Lu Qingran was stunned and slowly nodded. It was all thanks to him that he ended up like that. Meng Qi raised her chin towards the area behind her and said. Lu Qingran's eyes widened. She opened her mouth and murmured, but she was stunned for a while before she continued. "Fellow Taoist Qin didn't die, right?" Lu Qingran hurriedly said. "Also, he was injured during the tribulation. His injuries were so serious because he failed the tribulation and went mad." Meng Qi. So that day at the coal pond in the back mountain, Lu Qingran clearly took care of Qin Xiaoma. She was also a medical cultivator, so why didn't she check on his injuries? Even if he really was careless and did something wrong, fellow Taoist Qin didn't die. He was punished by their master later and had to face the wall to reflect on his mistakes for 8 months. You shouldn't have killed him. When Lu Qingran said this, she was about to cry again. Tears hung on her long eyelashes and could fall down at any time. Lu Qingran turned her head and looked around. Seeing that many cultivators had already gathered around, she felt even more confident. "Junior Marshal Sister Meng, I know you don't like me," she said softly. "Meng Qi, I indeed don't like you, but I won't kill you just because I don't like you." Lu Qingran's eyes were brimming with tears. "Even if you've already betrayed the sect and are no longer a disciple of my cool Breeze Valley, you should still remember that when you first entered the sect, Master earnestly taught you that you couldn't leave someone in the lurch. How could you just watch Elder Brother Jinian die? If you were willing to save him, you could have saved him." Lu Qingran choked with sobs. "Even if you don't like him, you're a medical cultivator. Have you really completely forgotten Master's words?" Meng Qi frowned slightly. She was a bit irritable. Lu Qingran was so annoyed. How could there be so many male cultivators who were willing to live or die for her? They were even willing to fight until their heads bled for her. She couldn't help but glance at Qin Xiaoma. The black-robed man in front of her used to be one of them. Lu Qingran, Meng Qi said coldly. "Let me say it," Qin Xiaoma said. He looked around and said loudly, "I'm Qin Xiaoma of the Cloud Summit. He was my senior martial brother. I was the one who killed him. It had nothing to do with anyone else." Qin Xiaoma paused. He glanced coldly at Lu Qingran. Although he'd gotten his revenge, he didn't want to talk about the past, nor did he want to talk about it in public. He didn't need other people's sympathy, nor did he need other people's recognition. He'd just kill those who deserved to die. Qin Xiaoma's gaze scared Lu Qingran so much that she took a step back. He then continued, "The reason I killed him was because this senior martial brother, who used to be my close friend, stabbed me in the back with a poison dagger when I was about to advance to the nascent soul realm and transcend my tribulation. He even hit me with his palm. Not only did I fail to transcend my tribulation, but I also suffered a chi deviation and almost died." Fortunately, when Qin Xiaoma said this, his tone became gentler. "Fortunately, I met fellow Taoist Meng Qi and managed to keep my life. Therefore, I killed him for revenge. Even if I didn't meet him today, I would have gone to the southern land and taken his worthless life." He looked coldly at Lu Qingran. "I shouldn't have killed him." Lu Qingran shrank back again. Tears welled up in her eyes. She then said, "I don't believe it. Brother Jinian is a chivalrous and righteous person. Many people in the 3 realms know about his chivalrous life. This is just because you—" She looked at Meng Qi and said loudly, "I won't believe your one-sided story. Ask everyone. Does anyone believe you?" "I believe you." Meng Qi said, "Lu Qingran, you were also there that day. How could an ordinary person who suffered a chi deviation after failing a tribulation be injured like that? She paused, then said, "You said that I don't remember what Master taught me. Then Master is a medical cultivator, and you're also a medical cultivator. Master taught you medical skills and told you not to leave someone in the lurch. That day, when I went to the bottom of the lake to pick medicinal herbs, didn't you treat Chin Xioma? You didn't use your medical skills to treat people, but instead pester me endlessly. You're completely letting your emotions get the better of you. Did you forget who she taught you?" Lu Qing bit her lower lip. A cold light suddenly flashed through the depths of her eyes. This again. She didn't want it to be like this. Her eyes were still filled with tears. She said loudly, "Apart from you, is there anyone else who would believe it?" Brother Jinian entered the sect earlier than Qin Xioma, and his cultivation level is higher than his. He's also his senior martial brother, and they're close friends. Why would he harm him? Tribulation transcendence is extremely dangerous. Maybe Qin Xioma was hallucinating at that time. Lu Qing took a deep breath. She didn't want it to be like this. She was clearly the one who was popular, had more talent, and was doted on by Master the moment she entered the sect. She looked around and asked loudly, "Fellow Taoists, do you believe it?" They clearly found an excuse to kill Brother Jinian for the sake of Shijua Mountain. Do you really believe the words of someone who can casually kill his senior martial brother? Do you believe the words of a medical cultivator who leaves someone in the lurch? After Lu Qing finished speaking, she coldly glared at Meng Qi. She didn't believe that there would be anyone standing on her side at this time. When strangers saw her and Meng Qi for the first time, they were all willing to believe her. "I believe it." Suddenly, an unfamiliar cultivator said, "Fellow Taoist, you weren't here just now, were you?" That person looked at Lu Qing with a teasing smile on his face. Lu Qing was startled. "I also believe it." A cultivator standing next to that person also said, "We believe it." Another person said, "That's right, we believe in fellow Taoist Meng." Another person also said. At this time, there were more and more cultivators who passed the second test. Although many cultivators who came out later didn't hear the conversation just now, they quickly heard the entire matter from their fellow disciples. Soon, even more people said loudly, "We believe it. We believe whatever fellow Taoist Meng says." "That's right, we believe in fellow Taoist Meng." Someone saw Lu Qing's beauty and her eyes were filled with tears. His tone was still gentle. "It's not good for me to say too much about the internal affairs of Cloud Crushing Peak. However, I'm afraid you're mistaken about fellow Taoist Meng leaving someone in the lurch. You weren't here just now, right?" There were also cultivators who were more straightforward. If fellow Taoist Meng really did it for Shijua Mountain, she only needed to stand aside and watch. Most of us would have died by now. That person sneered and said, "If we're talking about threats, all of us added together are still bigger than a Dejiao Jinian, right?" However, she didn't even think about it and still cured our poison. Lu Qing was completely confused. In the end, when the world happened, why did Meng Qi suddenly have such charisma? At this time, another person said, "I actually don't think I'm a good person. Fellow Taoist Meng still saved me without asking anything. She didn't leave me in the lurch." From this, it can be seen that fellow Taoist Meng isn't someone who leaves someone in the lurch. I even feel that she's too kind. Maybe some people aren't worth her saving. That person paused, then continued. "So, if there really comes a day when she doesn't save someone, then I can only believe that that person deserves to die. Then, if that person doesn't die, I'm also willing to use my meager strength to kill that person." The person who spoke swept his cold gaze towards Lu Qing. He was a sword cultivator. His life-bound longsword was hanging by his side. Compared to Qin Shioma's longsword, that sword was narrower and sharper. He was clearly talking about another person, but his gaze seemed to be telling Lu Qing, "Be careful, or else the longsword doesn't have eyes." Lu Qing was completely stunned. Why? Why did it turn out like this? When the world happened just now? Were these people crazy? Meng Qi, Meng Qi, Meng Qi, Meng Qi. Lu Qingren took a deep breath. Tears streamed down her face. She choked with sobs. I'll definitely avenge Brother Jianian. Just as she finished speaking, a chilling aura suddenly appeared on both sides of her neck, and 4 long swords suddenly appeared. Chapter 155. Lu Qingran was completely stunned. Long swords flashing with cold light were at the side of her neck. The sword energy stimulated her skin and caused small goosebumps to appear on her delicate skin. She had never been treated like this before. This was not over yet. Lu Qingran felt the soles of her feet suddenly heat up. A circle of fire suddenly rose from the ground and trapped her in the center. The fire burned coldly. A gust of wind blew. Other than the swaying flames, Lu Qingran heard a buzzing sound above her head. She raised her head in a daze and saw a swarm of tiny, light green bugs flying and circling above her head. What was happening? Lu Qingren dazedly looked at the long swords at her neck. The long swords, spears, and flying little black insects did not move, but she could feel the pressure coming from them. These people who had attacked without hesitation were serious and not joking with her. Lu Qingran suddenly understood this. Her body started to tremble uncontrollably. Her tears fell quickly. Those tears slid down her smooth face and wet her clothes. A pear blossom with tears was the most heartbreaking. But those people who used swords, flames, and poisonous insects to trap Lu Qingran did not seem to have any pity. They looked coldly at Lu Qingran, their gazes sharper than the weapons and spells. Lu Qingran struggled to swallow, and her gaze slowly landed on Meng Qi's face. The blue-robed Xiozha stood there silently. Other than frowning a few times, his expression did not change at all. Lu Qingran suddenly felt that while Meng Qi was looking at her, she did not to her eyes. She had long lost her inner eyes. What is this? At this time, another voice sounded. The youth in red walked over as he looked curiously at the corpse on the ground, and Lu Qingran, who was trapped in a pile of long swords and spells. Fanchuan Tanshu. Come, I killed Zhao Jianian. Qin Xioma said that one of the 4 swords belonged to him. She didn't listen to any explanation. She believed that Meng Qi was the murderer and was ready to take revenge. Oh, the scarlet-clothed youth, Chu Tianfeng, replied indifferently before turning around abruptly. The 5 fingers of his right hand suddenly spread open. Lu Qingran suddenly screamed. Ah! A small flame had already ignited at the tip of her hair. She frantically extinguished the small flame with all her might, not even caring about the cold aura emanating from her sword. Chu Tianfeng sneered and said lazily, Lu Qingran, you can't put out that fire. What can you do with your current strength? Lu Qingran's face instantly turned deathly pale. She didn't say anything. She just desperately tried to extinguish the flames in her hair. Soon, she realized that it was just as Chu Tianfeng had said. She couldn't extinguish the flames. But fortunately, the flames didn't really burn her hair. It just looked a little scary at first. Lu Qingran slowly calmed down and slowly raised her head to look at Chu Tianfeng. The proud young man had a handsome face. Just a year ago, he still cared for her in every way possible. But now his face was cold. Even the gaze he looked at her with was icy, without a trace of tenderness. Chu Tianfeng was right about one thing. Right now, she really couldn't do anything. Let's go. Meng Qi turned around and didn't look at Lu Qingran anymore. Junior sister Meng. Lu Qingran suddenly called out to her loudly. Meng Qi stopped in her tracks and turned around to look at her quietly. Right now, she didn't have any feelings for Lu Qingran at all. In fact, to be honest, even in her previous life, she didn't have any feelings for this very popular senior sister of hers. She was just prepared to stay away from her when she met her again, so as to avoid being so unlucky again. Whether it was love or hate, Meng Qi's emotions had nothing to do with Lu Qingran at all. I will also become strong. Lu Qingran said slowly, word by word. Oh. Meng Qi nodded casually and turned to continue walking forward. Lu Qingran, ha! Chu Tianfeng laughed heartily and extinguished the fire in Lu Qingran's hair. He turned and left with Meng Qi. Even if the Xiuzha who were watching the show acted against Lu Qingran, they wouldn't really take her life after seeing that she had said some harsh words. At this time, everyone shook their heads and turned to go to their next checkpoint. Soon, only Lu Qingran, Wei Yuanzhong, who was still lying on the ground, and Zhao Jianyan's corpse were left on the grassland. There was still a long sword hanging motionlessly next to Lu Qingran's neck. Qin Xiaoma still stood in place and looked at her silently. "Are you going to kill me?" Lu Qingran asked. She looked at Qin Xiaoma fearlessly, the hands hanging at her sides slowly clenched, her back straight, stubbornness written all over her pretty little face. "Yes." Qin Xiaoma's tone was calm. "Ah." Lu Qingran laughed coldly. Her face was full of tear stains, her long eyelashes were wet, and her palm-sized face was full of stubbornness. Even Wei Yuanzhong, who was lying on the side, couldn't bear it, and said, "Qin Shitty, she's just saying it." Qin Xiaoma ignored Wei Yuanzhong. He knew more than Wei Yuanzhong. In the future, Lu Qingran would have a very strong backer. Calculating the time she would meet that person, it would be around the time they left the 10 Extremes Mountain. At that time, if she really wanted to take revenge on Meng Qi, even if they could leave the 10 Extremes Mountain, they probably wouldn't be that person's match. "If you want to kill me, then do it." Lu Qingran's back was still ramrod straight, and she looked at Qin Xiaoma proudly. "You can kill Brother Jianian, so you naturally won't hesitate to kill me." Qin Xiaoma's right hand's index and middle fingers came together, and his life-bound sword hummed softly as it stabbed towards Lu Qingran. "Qin Shitty," Wei Yuanzhong anxiously shouted. "Are you crazy?" His body still couldn't move, and he comically bounced on the ground like a fish. Qin Xiaoma's sword was famous for its speed, and his sword was already very close to Lu Qingran. His fingers had just moved, and that cold sword intent had already brushed past the other party's neck. No matter how proud Lu Qingran was, her beautiful face turned pale. She was so shocked that she couldn't speak, and her body subconsciously shrank back. He wasn't joking. He really wanted to kill her. The killing intent on Qin Xiaoma's sword was really too dense, and it couldn't be concealed at all. Lu Qingran gritted her teeth. She was clearly telling herself to run, but her legs seemed to be filled with lead, and she couldn't move at all. Was she really going to die? Was she going to die here? She didn't want to die. She still didn't want to die. Lu Qingran could even feel that the sharp edge of Qin Xiaoma's sword was already touching her skin. In just a moment, she would be a corpse lying on the ground like Zhao Jianian. In that split second, Qin Xiaoma's life-bound sword seemed to be lightly flicked by an invisible finger. The sword froze at Lu Qingran's neck. It clearly only needed a little more force to kill her, but it was difficult to move forward. Another light jung sound. The life-bound sword was once again lightly flicked by someone. That sword was connected to his mind. Qin Xiaoma's entire body shook. In an instant, he couldn't stand steadily, and his tall body flew backwards. With a bang, he was thrown heavily onto the grass. This change was extremely sudden. Qin Xiaoma wasn't that far from the perfect spirit-severing stage. Those who could enter 10 Extremes Mountain were at most insightful emptiness cultivators. Even if they were insightful emptiness cultivators, they wouldn't go so far as to casually fling his life-bound sword and throw him out. Right now, he didn't even know who the other party was and where they were. Qin Xiaoma lay on the ground, unable to move for a long time. He took a deep breath. The life-bound sword that was frozen in the air finally flew back to his side. Who was it? Who was helping Lu Qingran? Qin Xiaoma propped himself up on the ground with both hands, trying to stand up. Lu Qingran also opened her eyes wide. Her eyes were filled with bewilderment. She looked around blankly, as if she didn't know what was going on either. "She can't die." A gentle voice suddenly sounded beside Qin Xiaoma's ear. That voice seemed to be very close, as if it was directly whispering softly into his ear. But it also seemed to be very far away from him, as if it came from the misty sky. He couldn't tell whether the owner of the voice was male or female. He only felt that the voice was very pleasant to hear, filled with an indescribable feeling. It was just a few simple words, and it wasn't in order to change Xiaomo. Yet, a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. He shouldn't want to kill Lu Qingran. Don't you also like her very much? That voice seemed to laugh, and then said, You should like her. Right now, you hate her, isn't it because she doesn't like you? That's right, he liked her very much. Do you still remember the first time you saw her? That voice said softly. Do you still remember the first time you saw her when you opened your eyes? At that time, didn't you already like her and were deeply attracted to her? That seems to be the case. Qin Xiaoma only felt his head become more and more dizzy, and only that voice whispered in his ear. So, how can you kill her? You love her. He opened his mouth and muttered repeatedly, yes, that's it. Don't lie to yourself anymore. You love her. You can live for her, and you can die for her. That voice said softly, I can for her. Qin Xiaoma raised his head. He saw Lu Qingran running towards him, her beautiful eyes full of worry. She was worried about him? You see, just now you wanted to kill her, but she's still worried about you. Isn't she the kindest girl in the world? The girl who is most worthy of your love? That voice continued to persuade him patiently. Yes, Qin Xiaoma muttered in response. He faintly felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what. Lu Qingran had already run to his side. She leaned over to support him. Are you okay? Qin Xiaoma turned his hand and grasped Lu Qingran's hand that was supporting his arm. Her soft fingers were a bit cold in his palm. He raised his head slowly, somewhat stiffly. They were so close now that he could clearly see the tear stains on Lu Qingran's face. He saw her long, wet eyelashes, which were gently trembling like butterfly wings in the cold wind. Qin Xiaoma, are you okay? Lu Qingran asked him, her tone full of concern. You see, she's so worried about you. She's so sincerely worried about you. She's a truly kind-hearted girl. She won't ask you to pay spirit stones. That gentle voice suddenly rose. The voice that was as pleasant as the spring breeze was now filled with unspeakable anger. Damn it! In the distant blue sky, there seemed to be a bloody red light exploding. Even the horizon was dyed blood red. Qin Xiaoma's muddled mind seemed to have been struck by lightning. He instantly woke up. It's him again, that voice said hatefully through gritted teeth. Who is it? Qin Xiaoma brushed aside Lu Qingran's hand. His strength had recovered, and he slowly stood up. In 10 Extreme Mountain, there was a Shouja that could make this person so strong that she could completely crush him. Wary. He heard that voice snort coldly. A wave of coldness suddenly attacked him from all directions. At the same time, only a tenth of Meng Qi's third pass had passed. Her third pass was also related to medicine. There was a flat path that led straight ahead. There were countless little houses on the side of the path. Every 5 steps Meng Qi took, she would reach the door of the next little house. Pushing open the door and entering, there would be an injured or sick person waiting for her in the room. That path was not hard to walk and was not long. Meng Qi stood at the entrance and could see the exit. However, it took her a lot of time to treat the patients in the little houses one by one. Meng Qi was in the 9th little house right now. She had a silver needle in her hand. In the Dan cauldron next to her, medicinal liquid boiled and gave off waves of bitter medicinal smell. At this time, a wave of coldness suddenly attacked her. Ugh! Meng Qi gave a muffled grunt. Her life-bond Dan cauldron was the 5-ling cauldron. The fire burning in the cauldron was the leaf fire formation she had carved on the Dan cauldron. But now, the 5-ling cauldron had frozen into ice, and the leaf fire was instantly extinguished. Such a strong coldness. Meng Qi instinctively looked up at the sky. These little houses did not have roofs. She could clearly see the gray sky. In the distant horizon, the bloody light suddenly brightened again. This time, it almost lit up half the sky. Meng Qi's heart started to beat quickly. She had never been so panicked before and immediately stood up. What was going on? Meng Qi stared blankly. Her heart was beating faster and faster. She could not help but raise her hand and touch her chest. Although she did not know what had happened, why was she suddenly worried? In the room, The patient who was waiting for her treatment was still in the same position. It seemed that as long as Meng Qi did not continue, his injury would not worsen. At this moment, the red light in the sky flashed again. This time, it was different from before. Meng Qi looked up at the sky in a daze. The red light had faded and the sky had turned blue again. But now, there were 7 stars shining in the sky. The Big Dipper. Meng Qi looked at the 7 stars that were arranged in the shape of a spoon. The stars were incomparably bright and could be seen clearly even during the day. Was it Qin Yanzhenjun? This thought suddenly flashed through her mind. Was it him? So her heart was beating so fast just now. Was that sudden worry and anxiety also because of Yun Qinyan? Did something happen to him? At this moment, another red light flashed in the sky. This time the ground shook. Even Meng Qi was the same. She staggered and almost lost her balance. A voice suddenly sounded in her mind. Meng Qi. Was this Yun Qinyan's voice? Meng Qi was a little uncertain. The voice was too soft and disappeared too quickly. It was just a flash. Meng Qi. Not long after, the voice suddenly sounded again. Chapter 156. Was it calling her? Who was it? She thought about it carefully. That voice sounded a little unfamiliar. It was ethereal and not real at all, and it seemed to be very far away from her. Meng Qi was a little uncertain. She didn't know if she was hallucinating or not. The sky had returned to normal. The blue sky was clean, and there were only a few white clouds on the horizon. The flames and stars just now had completely disappeared. Meng Qi raised her hand and touched her chest. Her heart was still beating very fast, as if it was going to jump out of her chest. What was going on? She narrowed her eyes and looked at her spread, open fingers. While the 5-spirit cauldron was still refining medicine, she withdrew her divine sense and quickly scanned her spiritual sea and body. The inner core was floating in the air above her spiritual sea. Threads of spiritual energy slowly fell and finally merged into her spiritual sea. The bamboo slip that Lin Yin gave her stayed quietly beside the inner core. A few threads of spiritual energy were separated from the inner core and wrapped around the bamboo slip. Everything was normal, except for her unusually fast heartbeat. Meng Qi took a deep breath and tried to calm herself down. The 5-spirit cauldron's medicinal herbs were fragrant. The few spiritual herbs finally turned into a small pill. She calmly fed the pill to the person in the room and quickly finished the rest. Then, she raised her hand and took back her 5-spirit cauldron. Ugh! Meng Qi suddenly groaned. As soon as the 5-spirit cauldron returned to her spiritual sea, it suddenly spun quickly and kept making bang-bang sounds. It was as if something in the 5-spirit cauldron was beating it. What was going on? Meng Qi glanced at her 5-spirit cauldron in confusion. It was empty. There was nothing in it. She frowned. Was this also one of the tests of the 10 Extremes Mountain? Meng Qi waved her hand and called out the 5-spirit cauldron again. The palm-sized cauldron spun in the air and finally quieted down. The bang-bang sound were also gone. So what was the meaning of this? Did her natal pill cauldron not want to stay in her spiritual seat anymore? Meng Qi frowned even more. Just as she was about to go forward and check her natal pill cauldron, she suddenly stopped. Ah! Meng Qi could not help but exclaim in his heart as his eyes widened. She was shocked to see that a small claw had suddenly emerged from her 5-spirits cauldron, which was supposed to be empty. Meng Qi? Its small white paws were furry and probably smaller than Meng Qi's palm. Her little paw gently rested on the edge of her 5-spirit cauldron. Not long after, she stretched out another paw and rested it on the edge of the cauldron. Meng Qi held his breath. After the little claws came out, 2 semicircular little ears popped out of the 5-spirits cauldron. The ears were still fluffy and swayed back and forth gently. Meng Qi! She swallowed her saliva with some difficulty. Wasn't this, the ears in the 5-spirits cauldron continued to rise slowly, followed by the same fluffy little head. Then, it was her gem-like eyes that were even more beautiful than the sky. Meng Qi was about to suffocate. It was little Qi. No, This was Yun Qingyan's primordial spirit. That little white tiger looked exactly the same as Yun Qingyan's little white tiger that Meng Qi had seen in the beginning. It was just that those azure blue eyes were even clearer. It lay obediently on the edge of the cauldron and stared at Meng Qi for a moment. Its little head suddenly tilted slightly, and with a howl, it suddenly jumped up and pounced on her. Meng Qi hurriedly reached out to catch it. A primordial spirit actually did not have a physical body and was weightless. She instinctively stretched out her arms and hugged the little white tiger in her arms. Howl, howl. The little white tiger softly whimpered and found a comfortable position in her arms. It lay down as it stopped moving. When Meng Qi looked down, the little white tiger had already closed its eyes and placed one paw on her arm. It looked like it was ready to have a good sleep. Actually, it was not a big deal to hug it. A primordial spirit was completely weightless. To Meng Qi, it was like carrying her own personal Dharma treasure. But why did the little white tiger suddenly appear here? Meng Qi did not know what to call this little fellow. Calling it Little Qi was definitely out of the question. This was Yun Qingyan's primordial spirit, not the injured little white tiger. She knew that the primordial spirits of demon cultivators were like this. They would never grow up and would ultimately be different from the original body. Calling it Qing Yanzhen Jun obviously would not work either. Meng Qi looked at the little white tiger's fluffy body, small ears, and small head. She could not help but purse her lips. She really wanted to touch it. Just once. Meng Qi reached out to rub the little white tiger's head. Although it did not have any physical weight, it still felt good to the touch. It did not shrink at all. Nice touch. Meng Qi could not help but rub the little white tiger's head again and then pinch its ears. Her slender fingers gently scratched the chin of the primordial spirit. She watched as the other party lifted its head in satisfaction. It did not even open its eyes as it purred. "Why are you here?" Meng Qi asked gently. The little white tiger's primordial spirit purred as if it did not hear her at all. "I know." Meng Qi snapped out her days. She and Yun Qingyan were Dao companions now, so it did not seem inexplicable that the other party's primordial spirit appeared in her cauldron. Was that so? Meng Qi was instantly energized. Was there such a good thing in becoming Dao companions with a demon cultivator? She could actually share the other party's primordial spirit. Is that so? Meng Qi lowered her head and stroked the little white tiger's primordial spirit. She was in a great mood. "Are you here because Qing Yanzhen Jun and I are Dao companions?" The little white tiger's primordial spirit continued to purr as a reply. It was so lazy that it couldn't even be bothered to open its eyes. However, a vague thought flashed across Meng Qi's mind. She lowered her head and looked at the little white tiger's primordial spirit in her arms. Its fluffy body rose and fell slowly with the other party's breathing. Meng Qi recalled the vague thought that flashed across her mind just now. Was it the primordial spirits? So, not only could she share the primordial spirit of a demon cultivator, but she could also slowly communicate with the other party's thoughts like her own natal Dharma treasure. Was it so easy? What exactly happened just now? The sudden appearance of the little white tiger's primordial spirit made Meng Qi certain that something must have happened. The little white tiger's primordial spirit turned over, revealing its fluffy little tummy toward her, and even yawned. Meng Qi reached out to rub its tummy. The little white tiger even narrowed its eyes in satisfaction. In any case, it looked like it was not worried at all. She was a little amused and pinched the little white tiger's semicircular little ears. The other party had clearly completely treated her as one of its own. It obediently lay down and let her pinch it, even taking the opportunity to rub against her gently. Meng Qi softened her voice. "Is your master all right?" The little white tiger purred as it rubbed its little head against Meng Qi's palm, looking very innocent. Meng Qi felt that it was both cute and a little amusing. To be honest, whether it was the little Qi of the past or this adorable and silly little white tiger's primordial spirit, it was very difficult for her to associate it with Yun Qingyan. Qin Yanzhenjun was supposed to be an outstanding and aloof, almighty being. In the end, her primordial spirit was even more adorable than the little red fox from Xing. Was it okay? Meng Qi pursed her lips and rubbed the little white tiger's primordial spirit again. She suddenly realized that her heart, which had been beating very fast just now, had now slowed down. The indescribable worry and anxiety that had filled her chest for no reason seemed to have disappeared. Was it because of it? She scratched the little white tiger's chin. Sure enough, the other party raised its little head and purred nonstop. Meng Qi waved her hand, and the five-spirit cauldron flew to her side. It leaned over and gently rubbed the little white tiger's primordial spirit. "I'm going to continue moving forward," she said gently. "Can you go back into the cauldron?" She had not passed this stage yet. Since it seemed that Yin Qingyan was fine, she had to continue. The little white tiger's primordial spirit purred and jumped into the five-spirit cauldron. It squatted inside obediently and poked its little head out to look at Meng Qi. Its azure blue eyes were clear and filled with curiosity. "Good boy." Meng Qi patted its head as if rewarding it. The five-spirit cauldron suddenly shook and rubbed against her palm. It was easier for Meng Qi and her natal Dharma treasure to communicate telepathically. Previously, she could vaguely sense the five-spirit cauldron's thoughts. Now, she knew that her natal cauldron was full of joy. Meng Qi could not help but smile and touch the five-spirit cauldron. She waved her hand, and the five-spirit cauldron disappeared with the little white tiger's primordial spirit and entered her spirit sea. Meng Qi hurriedly withdrew her divine consciousness and saw the five-spirit cauldron floating in the air above her spirit sea. The little white tiger's primordial spirit was squatting obediently in the cauldron. This was her natal Dharma treasure. Once it returned to her spirit sea, the spirit chi in her inner core would naturally surge towards the five-spirit cauldron and enter her spirit sea through it. At this time, there was an additional little white tiger's primordial spirit in the five-spirit cauldron, so it did not affect her. Meng Qi saw wisps of spirit chi from her inner core surging towards the five-spirit cauldron. The little white tiger's primordial spirit was squatting in the cauldron and was quickly surrounded by the spirit chi in her inner core. The little white tiger's primordial spirit had originally had a dazed expression, its eyes clear and bright. At this time, its eyes were like Yin Qingyan's when she returned to her white tiger form. Starlight flashed through its eyes. Meng Qi stilled slightly. A thought flashed through her mind, but this thought was so fast that she could not grasp it. Forget it for now. Meng Qi regained his senses and looked up at the sky. There were no more flames in the sky, and everything appeared so calm. She continued to walk forward. The test of the third stage was clearly aimed at the different factions of different cultivators. Meng Qi was not worried about this. She only needed to walk forward along the path and treat the people in each room step by step. Then she could continue to the next room. In this regard, she was quite confident. Also, the third test did not require the Xiozha to prepare their own medicinal herbs. As long as the Xiozha confirmed the Ling herbs they needed, they would be provided with what they needed. The Xiozha could make the damn medicine themselves, take it orally, or apply it externally to complete the treatment. Meng Qi walked out of another room and looked forward. There were only 3 rooms left in front of her. Soon, she would pass the third test. She exhaled and looked back. The path was covered by clouds and mist, and she could not see clearly. Meng Qi withdrew her divine sense. In the sky above her spiritual sea, the five-spirit cauldron that she had just put away was still floating there. The little white tiger's primordial spirit was still sitting obediently in the belly of the cauldron, only revealing a little bit of its furry ears. She could not help but smile. The little white tiger's primordial spirit seemed to sense something. It suddenly opened its eyes and looked around curiously for a moment. However, what puzzled Meng Qi was that, logically speaking, she had been treating patients and saving people in the third test, so her medical skills should have improved. Now, it seemed that this test was for her to complete the test, and there was no reward in the process. Meng Qi did not think about it anymore. She gathered her thoughts and walked to the next room. This was already the third room from the end of the third test. Like every room before her, there was a person lying on the bed inside. Meng Qi walked into the room and heard the person moaning in pain. Ugh! The room was filled with the smell of blood. It was not just the smell of blood. It seemed to be mixed with rotten food and the smell of mud, making the smell of blood especially pungent. The person lying on the bed was a middle-aged man. When he heard the sound of footsteps, he turned his head with difficulty to look at Meng Qi. Save me. He looked to be in his 50s or 60s, but his skin was pale. His face was bloodless, and even his lips were grayish-white. His nose was gently moving, and his white hair was messy like withered grass. Meng Qi walked to the side of the bed. The smell of blood was much stronger than before. She could see clearly now that the middle-aged man was very, very thin. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was all skin and bones. His entire face seemed to be covered with a layer of skin directly on his bones, and his skin looked dull. There were only a few sparse eyebrows left, and his eyes were lifeless. However, his eyes could still move with Meng Qi. They still fell on her face, and his protruding atoms apple bobbed up and down. Even from so far away, she could hear the sound of phlegm in his throat. Save me. The man moaned with difficulty. His fingers lifted up a little from the bed and fell down weakly again. This was a very weak person, but he still had a trace of consciousness. Meng Qi put her right hand together, and a blue light flashed. She gently pressed it between the man's eyebrows. The man's skin was very cold and without elasticity. If he could not speak, she would feel no different from a dead person. The middle-aged man took deep breaths. Every breath seemed to be with all his strength. In addition, he was very thin now, so she could clearly see his chest rising and falling vigorously with every breath he took. There were no external injuries. Meng Qi quickly did a simple examination for the middle-aged man. The smell of blood did not come from his wounds. She took out silver needles from her storage brocade pouch. This was also a talisman that medical Xiu liked. Some medical Xiu, such as Xue Chengxian, even chose silver needles as their soul-tethered talisman. Meng Qi's silver needles were not as handy as Xue Qingxuan's soul-tethered talisman, but she had used them for a long time. She flicked the silver needles into the man's meridian point and formed a spell with her fingers. The silver needles quickly followed the man's meridian point and entered his body. A normal Lianqi Xiuzhe, who had no external injuries or internal injuries, was now skin and bones. It had to be known that as long as one stepped onto the path of Xiuzhe, even if they did not have enough talent and could only be Lianqi or Zhuji, they would still be stronger than normal people. Normal minor illnesses were far away from them. To be this weak, it was usually due to injuries. The Ling Si was very small, but it was normal. There was not much Ling energy in the Ling Si, but it was the size and quantity of a normal Lianqi Xiuzhe. The silver needles had already returned to Meng Qi's hands. She lowered her head and grasped the middle-aged man's wrist. The wrist was very thin, and she could feel the pulse. The pulse was slightly weak, but it was not too big of a problem. Meng Qi took out her natural silk gloves and put them on. She reached out and rolled up the man's sleeves. The arm was as thin as firewood, the skin loose and cold. She hesitated and then reached out to undo the other's clothes. On the chest, the ribs were clearly defined. Other than being thin and weak, there really was no other problem. Meng Qi became alert. This Lianqi Xiuzhe, middle-aged male Xiu, was so thin, he clearly was sick or injured. However, even with her current medical skills and cultivation, she couldn't find any clues at all. This 10 Extremes mountain was a bit interesting. Meng Qi thought, and then raised her hand to call out the 5 spirit cauldron. Snow ginseng, pale white spell, blood essence grass. She said the names of 7 or 8 Ling medicines in one breath. With a series of rustling sounds, those Ling medicines fell into her 5 spirit cauldron. The little white tiger's primordial spirit naturally came out as well. It was looking at Meng Qi with a pair of sleepy big eyes. It looked at Meng Qi and then lowered its head to sniff the five-spirit cauldron that it was already very used to. The smell of medicine hit its face, and it could not help but raise its paw to rub its little nose. Meng Qi flicked out a ninth-grade spirit stone, and flames suddenly rose under the five-spirit cauldron. The Ling medicines in the cauldron quickly melted into a ball, turning into a small bowl of light brown liquid. She put the liquid into a small bowl, helped the middle-aged man sit up, and brought the small bowl to his mouth. The man still had a trace of clarity in his mind, and he consciously gulped down the bowl of medicine. After all, this was only a test of the 10 Extremes Mountain. The Ling medicines provided were all extremely effective. Not long after he drank the medicine, his spirit shook, and he slowly exhaled. "Thank you, fellow Taoist," the middle-aged male Xiao said softly. "If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid I would have died here." "What happened?" Meng Qi asked. Medical cultivators' silver needles and spells were not omnipotent. Many times, only by knowing what the patient had experienced before could they find the cause of their injury or illness. Meng Qi took the small bowl and put it aside. She stood by the bed and looked at the middle-aged male Xiao, asking, "How long have you been like this?" "Almost 3 months." The man smiled bitterly. His voice was still weak, but it was a lot more energetic than before. At least he could speak completely. 3 months ago, I went hunting in the mountains. I wanted to find some rare birds and strange beasts to exchange for some spirit stones and new spell. If I could enter the foundation-building realm of my lifetime, I could extend my life by 10 years. Half of my life cultivation was not in vain. The middle-aged male Xiao spoke politely. "There's a forest 100 miles away from my home city. Usually, strange beasts would occasionally appear, but I'm not afraid of being laughed at by fellow Taoists. I can still deal with them." Who knew that I went to the forest that day and walked inside for a full hour, but I didn't even see a single living thing. I knew that something must have happened there that we didn't know about, so I quickly retreated and wanted to go back and tell the sect protecting the city. Meng Qi nodded. Who knew that before I could take a few steps, I felt a sharp pain in the back of my neck. Then, 7 or 8 sword Xiao wearing black clothes suddenly appeared. 7 or 8 of them attacked me, and I was just a small Qi refining cultivator. In the blink of an eye, several long swords stabbed me. Everything went black in front of my eyes, and I felt pain all over my body. Soon I fainted. Meng Qi nodded. In fact, she had already examined him. Whether it was the back of his neck or his body, there were no traces of external injuries. The middle-aged male Xiao was just a Qi refining cultivator. Even if he received the best treatment after being injured, even if it had been a year, with Meng Qi's current medical skills, she could still find out that he had been injured. However, she didn't say anything. She just listened to the middle-aged male Xiao continue speaking. When I woke up, I was already back home. The sect responsible for protecting our city had invited a medical cultivator and had already cured my external injuries. His medical skills were excellent. When I woke up, I'd already been unconscious for 5 days and 5 nights. The traces of external injuries on my body had already disappeared. At this point, he gasped for breath, his cheeks slightly red. He glanced at Meng Qi and said, "That medical cultivator was about 40 years old." He was already a medical cultivator at the peak of the 4th realm. He looked about 30 years old. He paused again before continuing, but he also couldn't see anything wrong with me other than my external injuries. I was getting weaker day by day. Not only could I no longer cultivate, but I also became like this, neither human nor ghost, struggling at death's door. Meng Qi nodded and paced back and forth in the room twice. Just by listening to this middle-aged male Xiao's narration, his mind was obviously clear, and his words were very organized. It didn't seem like he was deliberately lying. Moreover, he had no need to lie to her, unless he didn't want to live anymore. But he really wasn't injured. Meng Qi was sure that if the other party was really injured so badly by a long sword, as he said, and it was a sword Xiao who attacked him, she could not have noticed it. So, Meng Qi raised her head slightly and paced back and forth in the room twice. Then there were only 2 possibilities for this situation. The man was lying, or He was hallucinating at that time. What happened in the hallucination was so realistic that he believed it to be true and firmly believed it. Hallucination, and it was such a realistic hallucination. Even a chi cultivator would be able to firmly believe it after 3 months and feel that it was something that had really happened. That obviously couldn't be an ordinary hallucinogen. Although there were many hallucinogenic hallucinogens, there were very few that could still remember what happened so clearly and with such certainty after the effects of the drug wore off. Other than that, Meng Qi crossed her arms in front of her chest, and her left hand gently tapped on her right arm. This was a habit of hers. Whenever she had something she was doubtful about, she liked to walk around like this. The little white tiger's essence soul squatted on the ground and blinked at Meng Qi, its little head turning around with her. Other than hallucinogens, what else? Meng Qi kept recalling the records in the books she had read. Not only could it produce hallucinations, but it could also make people so weak, but their minds seemed clear. Meng Qi suddenly remembered that when she was in the southern land in her previous life, she had met Li Che in the poisonous swamp. The southern land had the largest poisonous swamp in the 3,000 worlds, and the variety of poisonous insects was the best in the 4 realms. Li Che's Songlang Academy was the strongest medical cultivation sect in the southern land, and its research and experience on poisonous insects were also the best in the 4 realms. Meng Qi had once seen records of a poisonous insect in the medical book Li Che had lent her. Heart-eating insect. The records about the heart-eating insect appeared clearly in her mind. Although it was called this, in reality, the heart-eating insect would not really eat a cultivator's heart. Or rather, it would not only eat the heart. It would live in the human body and feed on the human body, continuously reproducing until it completely devoured the body, and finally, it would eat the heart and brain together. Before this, they liked to use the human brain as their nest and live there. Not only could they cause hallucinations, some strong heart-eating insects could even control Xiuzha. When the previous host was about to be eaten up by them, they would control the dying host to find the next host. This process would take at most half a year. The heart-eating insects would also target normal people, but they still preferred to choose Xiuzha. One was that the bodies of Xiuzha were usually stronger than normal people and would not die so easily. The second was that other than flesh, the heart-eating insects that could absorb the Ling energy of Xiuzha could also grow faster. No wonder she did not find any problems just now. This kind of heart-eating insect living in a Xiuzha's body did not look like an injury. And this middle-aged man was a Xiuzha. The heart-eating insect in his body probably would not bear to eat him like this and wanted to absorb more Ling energy. TSK. Meng Qi snorted lightly. The man's organs were still there, but his muscles were almost gone. If another 2 months passed, it would be too late to reverse the situation. Now that she had determined the cause of the other's illness, it was much easier. Heart-eating insects sounded terrifying, but they were not especially powerful among poisonous insects. They could not cultivate on their own and were not civilized. They had low intelligence and could not even be considered strange beasts. Meng Qi spoke again. Erisima, Yiksha bamboo leaf, black frost grass. She wanted all insect repellents and did not hesitate to say the names of 5 kinds of Ling medicines. The 5 Ling cauldron quickly put in the Ling medicines that Meng Qi needed. The little white tiger's primordial spirit turned to look at its little friend and reached out with a small paw to dig at the Ling medicines. Meng Qi bent down to pick it up and flicked out another 9th grade Ling stone. The 5 kinds of insect repellents quickly rolled in the 5 Ling cauldron and quickly gave off waves of medicinal fragrance. The man who had been calmly describing his encounter suddenly screamed. His thin body jumped up high and then landed back on the bed with a bam. So painful. He let out a long scream, his thin and weak body desperately rolling on the bed. Not long after, he rolled to the ground, hugging his head and rolling on the ground. It hurts so much. Ah, damn it, you quack. Are you going to kill me or save me? Oh, it hurts so much. It hurts. The man's shrill screams sounded in the small room. Quack, quack. I don't want you to save me. Get lost, quack. He was already weak, and in just a moment, sweat poured down his body like rain, soaking his clothes. After Meng Qi took off his clothes, he did not tie his belt back, and now a small part of his chest was exposed. Under his thin skin, there seemed to be countless small soybeans squirming, crawling around quickly. The smell of medicine in the room became stronger, and the middle-aged male cultivator's strength became weaker. Soon, he lay on the floor of the room, exhausted, and looked at the sky blankly. He was still muttering, "Quack, quack, 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 quack." The little white tiger's primordial spirit seemed to understand his words. It roared and waved its little paws at him, as if it was angrily accusing the other party. Meng Qi's expression was as calm as before. This kind of thing could no longer arouse her emotions. She squatted down and lifted the man, who had no strength, back to the bed with one hand. Now, not only under the skin of the man's chest, but also under the skin of his arms and cheeks, one could see soybean-sized things moving at high speed. Meng Qi raised her hand, and her silver medicine knife was already in her hand again. With a flash of the knife, the man's clothes were all torn, revealing his body, which was not good-looking at all after being bedridden for 3 months, but definitely still belonged to a man's complete body. The little white tiger's primordial spirit, which had just been baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as if it wanted to teach him a lesson from Meng Qi, was stunned. Its blue eyes stared blankly at Meng Qi, and it saw the green-robed girl quickly raise her silver medicine knife again. The tip of the medicine knife was very sharp, narrow, and sharp. Meng Qi's movements were also very fast. Every time the knife went down, it would always leave a small drop of blood on the middle-aged male cultivator's body. But wherever the tip of the knife went, the little soybeans that were running quickly under the man's skin all stopped moving. In less than a quarter of an hour, there were hundreds of drops of blood on the man's skin. His ferocious face had completely calmed down, but his cheeks were flushed, and he didn't know where to look. Meng Qi's eyes were cold, and she didn't even frown from beginning to end. Okay. Her voice was also cold, like a mountain stream, and it completely pulled the man's somewhat muddled mind back. After the medicine is applied, the wound will quickly recover. Meng Qi paused. Take care of your body, and it will recover. Thank you, fellow Taoist. The middle-aged male cultivator was now completely awake, and he only felt that he was even more embarrassed than before. I can do it myself. Before he finished speaking, the medicinal liquid in the 5-spirit cauldron flew over, and Meng Qi spread it evenly on his wound. Those soybean-sized bumps gradually disappeared, and the skin became flat again. Heart-eating worms. She was still thinking about heart-eating worms, which generally only lived in swamps. Because they left a wet environment, they didn't need to be dealt with by cultivators at all, and would turn into a pool of pus. Why did they appear in the woods near the man's city? According to what he said just now, there shouldn't be an environment suitable for heart-eating worms to live in. In fact, according to the book Li Che gave her, heart-eating worms were not terrible. In comparison, Meng Qi knew of another kind of plant, which was far more terrible than heart-eating worms. That thing not only fed on flesh and blood, but also could devour souls. It was the soul-devouring vine that only existed in the Yao realm. Forget it. Meng Qi shook her head, and even she felt that she was a little funny. This was just a test of the 10 Extremes mountain. She really thought too much. Okay. Meng Qi finally confirmed that the heart-eating worms in the man's body had been eradicated by her, and said to him, "Have a good rest." "Thank you, fellow Taoist." The man suddenly struggled to sit up. "When I was hunting in the woods in the early years, I once had a bamboo slip. It's just that the records on it were too profound, and it was related to medical skills, so I couldn't understand it at all. Fellow Taoist medical skills are superb, and your heart is kind. That bamboo slip will forever be covered in dust with me. I will give that bamboo slip to fellow Taoist, and hope that fellow Taoist can save more people like me." "Thank you," Meng Qi said. She knew that this should be the extra reward for the 3rd test. Meng Qi took the bamboo slip, sent a wisp of spirit energy into it, and quickly looked at the contents inside. Huh. She suddenly widened her eyes in surprise. This bamboo slip, could it be? Meng-Chi looked at the contents of the bamboo slip with some disbelief. If this bamboo slip had to be given a name, it should probably be ancient poison scripture. Meng-Chi hurriedly glanced at it and saw the names of dozens of famous poisonous flowers and poisonous herbs that not only the 3,000 worlds, but also the Yao realm and the Devil realm were quite afraid of. In addition, there were some names of poisonous flowers that she had only heard of but had never seen before. They were probably extinct. In addition, there were some names of poisonous herbs that Meng-Chi had never even heard of before. In addition to recording their respective effects, poisons, places of origin, and cultivation methods, this bamboo slip also recorded. This was nothing. On the last page of this bamboo slip, there were two beautiful words that Meng-Chi was even familiar with. Lin Yan. It's Senior Lin Yan again. Meng-Chi put away the bamboo slip. She had already left the room. When she looked back, the inside was already like the previous rooms, covered in clouds and fog, making her unable to see anything clearly. So the reward was actually Senior Lin Yan's bamboo slip. Meng-Chi's heart skipped a beat, and the bamboo slip that she was holding in her hand just now suddenly disappeared from her palm. At the same time, a new bamboo slip appeared in her spiritual sea. It was placed side by side with the bamboo slip that Lin Yan originally gave her, and was quickly wrapped in her spirit energy. It was indeed Senior Lin Yan's thing. Although she didn't know why Senior Lin Yan's bamboo slip could always enter her spiritual sea and receive the nourishment of her spirit energy. But this way, it would be much easier for Meng-Chi to use the contents of the bamboo slip. She didn't need to use spirit energy now. With just a thought, she could easily see the contents of the bamboo slip. She and Senior Lin Yan were really quite fated. Meng-Chi couldn't help but feel a little happy. This was the profound realm doctor closest to her, and also the senior she admired the most. She turned her head and saw the 5-spirit cauldron and little white tiger's essence, soul, floating beside her. Little white tiger was hiding in the cauldron's belly, and it poked its little head out to look at Meng-Chi. Its azure blue eyes looked a little strange. Meng-Chi was a little amused by its gaze, and she couldn't help but reach out to rub its head. What's with that look? She knew that little white tiger's essence, soul, couldn't speak except for some of its own sounds. Meng-Chi still asked with a smile, "Why are you looking at me like that?" As expected, the little white tiger's essence, soul, continued to grumble as its azure blue eyes stared fixedly at Meng-Chi. What's wrong with it? Meng-Chi couldn't help but look at her 5-spirit cauldron again. This little guy was strange. The 5-spirit cauldron shook its round body slowly, meaning that it didn't know either. Okay. Meng-Chi waved her hand and didn't take it too seriously. We should go to the next house. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw the 5-spirit cauldron fly behind her and shake its body in front of a wooden sign. What's this? Why didn't I see it just now? The wooden sign was standing on the side of the road where Meng-Chi came from. The 5-spirit cauldron shook its body again, and little white tiger's essence soul also shook with it. There was a hint of disdain in its blue eyes. You can only choose one of the last 3 houses. Meng-Chi read the words on the wooden sign. You can pass this test if you complete one of the tests. After Meng-Chi finished reading, the 5-spirit cauldron shook its body again. At the same time, she could feel the pride of her natal cauldron. It seemed to be happy that it had discovered something amazing for its master. Ahem. Meng-Chi coughed lightly. The test here is quite interesting, she said. The 5-spirit cauldron stopped and looked at Meng-Chi with little white tiger's essence soul in a daze. And I don't know if this wooden sign is a lie. Meng-Chi continued. In the first round, that person bewitched me to give up. Before the second round, the drunken dragon grass was the person who sowed discord and made me kill each other. Now, if this third round is just a test of my medical skills, it's a little too simple. Meng-Chi said. The 5-spirit cauldron and little white tiger's essence soul were still in a daze and didn't move. So let's go and see what's in the next 2 houses first. Meng-Chi seemed to be talking to herself, but also seemed to be talking to the 5-spirit cauldron and little white tiger's essence soul. Maybe this wooden sign is also lying to us. If I really leave, it will directly judge me to fail the third round, and I might have to start again. At this point, Meng-Chi suddenly thought of the various patients she had encountered in the third round. Because it was a test, the diseases on those patients almost covered all kinds of different types. External injuries, internal injuries, poisons, demons injuries, strange beasts injuries. There were cultivators and ordinary people. There were men, women, children, and even pregnant women. It was simply a comprehensive collection of diseases. And there were also some difficult diseases that were rarely seen in the 3,000 worlds. To Meng-Chi, the third round was not so much a test as a reward. To her, it was simply like a fish in water. If it was not for the fact that she had to continue climbing the 10 Extremes mountain, she was even willing to stay here for a year and a half. However, not listening to the wooden sign was not entirely because she could not bear to leave. This 10 Extremes mountain was somewhat strange from the first round of the test. Those unfamiliar voices that spoke to them would always inadvertently bewitch them to walk on the wrong path. Therefore, Meng-Chi decided not to listen to the wooden sign. Even in the 10 Extremes mountain, even if this was a test, she should follow her heart. She understood, and her footsteps became firmer as she walked towards the second last room. At the same time, on the grassland at the foot of the 10 Extremes mountain, Xikong Xing and Chu Tianfeng were staring at each other. She looked at Chu Tianfeng, then looked at the silent Qin Xiaoma and Pei Mufeng and the others who were standing not far away. Finally, she could not help but turn her head to look at Li Che and Xue Qingxian. Is the third round of the medical cultivation test that difficult? Li Che scratched his head. The last 3 tests are indeed a little tricky, but before entering the final test, there is a wooden sign by the roadside that clearly says that you can choose one to complete, and you will pass the test. His face suddenly turned red. I entered all 3 rooms, and finally chose the simplest one. Us too. Xikong Xing nodded repeatedly. You only need to complete one of the last 3 tests. That's right. Xue Qingxian also said, I also chose one of them. Meng-Chi can't be. Xikong Xing frowned slightly. You didn't see the wooden sign, did you? Hee, the girl in yellow next to Xue Qingxian suddenly sneered. It's also possible that she hasn't passed the third test yet. There are so many patients inside. Even if according to the rules, you only need to choose one room on the left and right side of the road to complete, it still took me a full 32 hours to come out. Yuenku. Calm the girl in yellow was Xue Zichen. Speaking up to this point, she moved her body. Even my brother took 30 hours. He is already the best medical cultivator who can enter here. Meng-Chi comes from a small sect. Her cultivation is not good, and she has seen few patients, even if Xue Zichen gently bit her lower lip. Even if she has the approval of Senior Lin Yin and received her inheritance, how much can she learn in just a few months? So isn't it normal for her to be a little slow? Xikong Xing glared at her. Am I wrong? Xue Zichen looked back, not to be outdone. Besides, I only came out for less than an hour. We also need a rest. What are you in a hurry for? Don't you know your friend's cultivation and skills? Xikong Xing was too lazy to pay attention to her. This Xue Zichen didn't seem to like Meng-Chi. Although it wasn't obvious, there was always a trace of hostility in her words. What are you snorting for? You? Ah, Xue Zichen suddenly exclaimed halfway through her words. The grassland they were on, which was obviously very calm just now, suddenly shook and made a rumbling sound. What happened? Xikong Xing jumped up and saw that not only the grassland, even the distant Shizhou mountain peak was shaking, as if something huge had happened here. She was really anxious now. Meng-Chi hasn't come out yet. Will she be okay? Chu Tianfeng's expression changed, and subconsciously looked at Qin Xiaoma. The black-robed youth didn't say anything, and looked at Yan Xian. This son of the Mirror Moon Sky Gate Master was probably the person who understood Shizhou Mountain the most among them. You guys! Yan Xian raised his eyes to look at the sky, and said with some shock, Look over there. They raised their heads, and looked at the sky with all the Xiuzha still on the grassland. There, the long rainbow stretched across the sky from Shizhou Mountain towards them. What is this? Xikong Xing rushed to ask. I. Yan Xian shook his head and muttered, I don't know either. Everything that happens in Shizhou Mountain is a secret. No one knows. Look. Xikong Xing suddenly jumped up and pointed at the rainbow. Isn't that Meng Qi? That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.